All righty, folks. Well, there is new information that has emerged about the actual shooter of Charlie Kirk. Tyler Robinson has now been charged with murder in Charlie's shooting, which, of course, we knew was coming because there's lots and lots and lots of information about this shooter. According to the Wall Street Journal, Utah prosecutors unveiled 7 charges Tuesday against Tyler Robinson in the shooting death of conservative activist Charlie Kirk on a college campus last week. They said that they would seek the death penalty. Here is the prosecutor, Jeff Gray, talking about the fact that they will be seeking the death penalty in the state of Utah.
Following the press conference, I am filing a notice of intent to seek the death penalty. I do not take this decision lightly, and it is a decision I have made independently as county attorney, based solely on the available evidence and circumstances and nature of the crime. Because we are seeking the death penalty, the defendant will continue to be held without bail in the Utah County Jail.
The prosecutor in this case went on to explain that the shooter's DNA was found on the weapon. Again, there's no doubt as to what happened here or why this happened. It's an incredibly clear case of a political assassination, like crystal clear. There is no mystery. There is no enigma. There is no shadowy conspiracy. There is just the person who did the shooting and apparently a bunch of people behind the scenes who are encouraging him or echoing his desire to see it done. Here again is the prosecutor.
The rifle, ammunition rounds, and towel were sent for forensic processing. DNA consistent with defendant was found on the trigger, other parts of the rifle, the fired cartridge casing, 2 of the 3 unfired cartridges, and the towel.
Okay, well, the actual charging documents carried an enormous number more details. Those charging documents point out that at the moment of the shot, a UVU police officer was watching the crowd from an elevated vantage point. As soon as he heard the shot, he began to scan the area for threats. Believing the shot came from a rifle because of its sound, he looked for potential sniper positions. He noted a roof area approximately 160 yards away from Charlie as a potential shooting position and rushed there to look for the evidence. The suspected shooting position is adjacent to an open, publicly accessible walkway. To access the suspected location, a person must climb over a railing and then drop to the roof only slightly below. The UVU officer climbed over the railing and down onto the roof. He then walked to the suspected shooting position and confirmed a clear shooting corridor between the position and Mr. Kirk's seat. He also noticed markings in the gravel rooftop consistent with a sniper having lain on the roof. Impressions in the gravel potentially left by elbows, knees, and feet of a person in a prone shooting position. A camera captured the suspect as he ran across the roof to the suspected shooting position. The charging documents also explain that the shooter's mother said that over the last year or so, Robinson had become more political and had started to lean more to the left, becoming more pro-gay and trans rights oriented. She stated that Robinson began to date his roommate, a biological male who was transitioning genders. This resulted in several discussions with family members, but especially between Robinson and his father, who have very different political views. In one conversation before the shooting, Robinson mentioned that Charlie Kirk would be holding an event at UVU, which Robinson said was a stupid venue for the event. Robinson accused Kirk of spreading hate. We'll get back to that in just a moment. That particular line, spreading hate. Robinson's father reported that when his wife showed him the surveillance image of the suspected shooter in the news, he agreed it looked like their son. He also believed the rifle the police suspected the shooter used matched a rifle that was given to his son as a gift. As a result, Robinson's father contacted his son and asked him to send a photo of the rifle. Robinson did not respond. Robinson's father spoke on the phone with Robinson, and Robinson implied he planned to take his own life. Robinson's parents were able to convince him to meet at their home. As they discussed the situation, Robinson implied he was the shooter and stated he couldn't go to jail and just wanted to end it. When asked why he did it, Robinson explained there's too much evil and the guy, Charlie Kirk, spreads too much hate. They talked about Robinson turning himself in and convinced Robinson to speak with a family friend who's a retired deputy sheriff. According to those charging documents, police interviewed Robinson's roommate, a biological male who was involved in a romantic relationship with Robinson. The roommate told police that the roommate received messages from Robinson about the shooting and provided those messages to police. Now, what I'm about to read, there are many theories about what exactly these text messages were. One theory that my friend Matt Walsh has espoused, and I don't find highly implausible, is the idea that the roommate was in on it and that Tyler Robinson had basically planned out a conversation with his roommate in order to exonerate him, sort of Breaking Bad style. If you remember the end of the series Breaking Bad, Skyler, who is the wife of Walter White, she obviously knew about many of his crimes and covered it up and participated, and Walter, in an attempt to exonerate her of the crimes, sets up a call with her in which he basically claims, and she acts shocked, that she had nothing to do with anything. So that is a possible theory here. It's also possible that these are just genuine. But here is what the text messages and exchanges said. Quote, on September 10th, the roommate received a text message from Robinson, which said, drop what you are doing, look under my keyboard. The roommate looked under the keyboard and found a note that stated, quote, I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. Police found a photograph of this note. The following text exchange then took place. After reading the note, the roommate responded, what? With about 10 question marks. You're joking, right? 4 question marks. Robinson, I am still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep the secret till I died of old age. I'm sorry to involve you. Roommate, you weren't the one who did it, right? Robinson, I am. I'm sorry. Roommate, I thought they caught the person. Robinson, no. They grabbed some crazy old dude, then interrogated someone in similar clothing. I had planned to grab my rifle from my drop point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering. Roommate, why? Robinson, why did I do it? Roommate, yeah. I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I am able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they've moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it. Roommate, how long have you been planning this? Robinson, a bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it, but there is a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it. Robinson, I'm wishing I had circled back and grabbed it as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. I DEK if it had a serial number. I assume that was supposed to be, I don't know, if it had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about Prince. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. Didn't have the ability or time to bring it with me. I might have to abandon it and hope they don't find Prince. How the F will I explain losing it to my old man? Only thing I left was the rifle wrapped in a towel. Remember how I was engraving bullets? The effing messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notices bulge, UWU on Fox News, I might have a stroke. All right, I'm going to have to leave it. That really effing sucks. Judging from today, I'd say Grandpa's gun does just fine. IDK, I think that was a $2,000 scope. Robinson, delete this exchange. Robinson, my dad wants photos of the rifle. He says Grandpa wants to know who has what. The feds released a photo of the rifle, and it is very unique. He is calling me right now, not answering. Robinson, since Trump got into office, my dad has been pretty diehard MAGA. Robinson, I'm going to turn myself in willingly. One of my neighbors here is a deputy for the sheriff. Robinson, you are all I worry about, love. Roommate, I'm much more worried about you. Robinson, don't talk to the media, please. Don't take any interviews or make any comments. If any police ask you questions, ask for a lawyer and stay silent. Hey, so, I just have one question here, which is, if the roommate did not in fact call the police, does that make him an accessory after the fact? From what we understand, it was the father who called the cops. It was the father who convinced the shooter to turn himself in. But what is perfectly obvious is that we know the motive. There is no doubt about the motive. There is zero doubt, in fact, about the motive. Charlie Kirk was shot because Charlie Kirk was a conservative who believed that men are not women. Period. End of story. That is the motive. We know who the shooter was. We know why the shooter did it. Any extraneous conversations about other issues are a distraction from the reality of who did the shooting and the ideology that led to it. They're not only a distraction, they're a waste of time, and they're stupid. Okay, but the actual reality here is that there was one ideology that drove this, as I have been talking about for days now since the day of the shooting. The permission structures that have existed for too long on the left for a trans ideology that labels as inherently dangerous, genocidal, and violent anyone who says that a boy is not a girl, that's what created this. Notice the use of that word, hate, hateful. Charlie was he was hate-filled, he was hateful, he was filled with hate. What he was saying was just so hateful. Yesterday, the Daily Wire team and I had the privilege of hosting Charlie's show alongside Andrew Colvett, Charlie's executive producer. It was me, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles. It was a truly moving experience, obviously, to be sitting in the room that Charlie last occupied last week and having a moment to spend with Erica, which was, I think, truly devastating. In any case, one of the things that happened during the show is that a clip was played of Charlie debating a young woman on the question of transgenderism. And he asked her over and over and over, what is a woman? Which, of course, is a question that many of us on the right have asked people on the left about the bizarre accusation or notion that men can magically become women. But what I want to focus on here is the very last line that she says after it is clear that she cannot answer Charlie's questions. Here is a very viral clip of Charlie talking about the trans issue.
What is a woman without using the word woman in the answer? Can you answer that question or no?
It's just a person who believes they're a woman. What's wrong with that?
Okay. You can't answer you can't use the word woman in your answer. The inability to answer the most fundamental, obvious biological question, what is a woman? This is not troubling. Like, it's so simple, it's so obvious. And I guess the question is, when is womanhood then achieved?
Just like for that, whenever they decide. I mean, like...
Last chance. Can you tell me what a woman is? Are you a woman?
Why are you so hateful?
And Charlie laughs, and everybody's laughing.
I asked you what a woman was. That's not hateful.
I gave you the definition.
Okay, why are you so hateful? Why are you so hateful? And that's a laugh line, right? Because everybody is sitting there going, that's not hateful. Did Charlie say anything remotely hateful in that clip? Anything. He literally said, what is a woman? Define the term without using the word woman. There's nothing remotely hateful about that. Nothing. That is a very basic question. That's like define cup without using the word cup. You say, okay, it's a vessel that is capable of carrying liquid, right? Any definition that you use has to be defined with reference to other defined terms. You can't say a cup is a thing that believes it's a cup, or a cup is a cup. That doesn't add any content or information to the definition. That's what Charlie's saying. And she labels it hateful. Why am I focusing in on that? Because the use of that word hateful, that word appears in the killer's text exchanges with his gay trans furry lover. And it appears for a reason, because the psychological structure that has been set up, and it is inherent in trans ideology, is that denial of trans identity is a form of genocidal hatred. And the only proper response to that is murder. The only proper response to that is violence. As I say, there are ideologies like this all over the spectrum. Truly, there are ideologies that rest on the idea that articulation of opposition to this point, to a point of view, existence, is in fact a threat that must be met with violence. Radical Islam makes the claim that the failures of Muslim countries around the world, that is a result of imperialism and colonialism and can only be fought with violence. And that anybody who argues, for example, that there are pretty major cultural differences between radical Islamic countries and the West is a person who is really just making a false argument as a disguise for power, and power must be met with power. The Marxist position, the Free Luigi position, which we'll get to Luigi Mangione in a second, because again, this is very baked into the left. The Marxist position, which is that rich people are in and of themselves a threat to poor people because the way they got rich is by stealing from poor people. And therefore, the very presence of rich people is evidence of their exploitative nature. They are bad people by nature of their bank account and a threat to me. And therefore, I get to go do violence to them. It's baked into the ideology. White supremacy, same kind of thing. The idea is that white people are under grave genocidal assault, largely from people of color or Jews who are manipulating the system. And therefore, those people are a threat to me, and I can go do violence, which is why, again, as I've said before, and I will continue to say, when there is an assassination, when there is an act of violence, a shooting that seems to have political implications, we all know immediately what are the spectrum of possibilities available for the shooter. We all know this. I mean, I can speak from personal experiences to the number of death threats I receive, and I know exactly where they're coming from. What are the ideologies that are driving them? We know the ideology that drove the murder of Charlie Kirk. We know what drove this. And this should be a unifying moment for the country to be able to condemn that ideology. It's not enough to say political violence is wrong. And it is a waste of time to debate other ancillary issues. The question is whether you are willing to condemn an ideology that says it is a form of hatred and genocide to say a boy is not a girl. Whether you're part of that ideological superstructure. And the answer is that there are an awful lot of people, tons and tons of people who are part of that ideological superstructure. Tons of people. Already coming up, Luigi Mangione just had his terrorism charge removed. This is the permission structure for violence. We'll also get into Kash Patel in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Had some fisticuffs with Senator Cory Booker, as well as Senator Adam Schiff. We'll get into all of it first. Everyone says AI will make the world better, but the question is better for whom? One iteration would have insurance companies tracking health searches, raising premiums, employers screening candidates based on browsing history. AI could, be a problem. That's why I protect myself with ExpressVPN, and you should as well. ExpressVPN encrypts all your online activity, routes it through secure servers, so no one can see what you're doing online. Not your internet provider, not your data brokers, not AI systems. your browsing history simply doesn't exist for anyone to use against you later. It's dead simple to use. It works on any device that connects to the internet. Phones, laptops, tablets, you name it. It's fast enough, you won't even notice it's running while you stream, game, or browse. It comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk. That's why tech experts at CNET and The Verge consistently rate ExpressVPN as the #1 VPN. I've been on the road consistently and continuously for weeks at this point. That means I'm using public Wi-Fi all the time, at the airport, at the hotel. I need ExpressVPN because my data is my own. Don't wait until it's too late. The time to protect your data from the future is now. Use my special link to get 4 extra months of ExpressVPN's privacy protection for free. Just head on over to expressvpn.com/Ben to get 4 extra months for free. Also, when was the last time you bragged about your wireless company? Like, did you know my wireless company gave away 1,000 American flags to deserving vets and forgave $10 million in veteran debt? Did you know my wireless company raised almost $500,000 to prevent veteran suicide? When your wireless company is Pure Talk, there's a whole lot to brag about. You can even brag about the coverage you get with Pure Talk, a 5G network that is insanely fast, dependable, and secure. And you can brag about how much money you save with Pure Talk. Unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of high-speed data is just $35 a month with mobile hotspot. Now, I'm constantly using my phone for legitimately everything, especially when I'm on the road this way, calling the family, checking in. I need good coverage. I need it at the best price, and that's why I love my Pure Talk. If you need another reason, something you can really brag about, Pure Talk is the only wireless company that gives you a free 1-year membership to Daily Wire Plus when you go to puretalk.com/Shapiro. Again, choose a qualifying plan at puretalk.com/Shapiro. Relish your free 1-year membership to Daily Wire Plus. Pure Talk. Wireless worth bragging about. Go get the coverage I use at the price that you want. Again, that is puretalk.com/Shapiro, and get that free 1-year membership to Daily Wire Plus when you do. I mean, yesterday happened to mark a judge saying that Luigi Mangione, the murderer of a United Healthcare executive, should not be charged with first-degree murder. Well, actually, he was always going to be charged, technically speaking, with second-degree murder. I guess in the state of New York, first-degree murder is typically only murder of law enforcement. But the question is whether there was going to be another charge of terrorism that was added on. And that was the charge that was dropped. Now, clearly, Luigi Mangione shooting Brian Thompson, the healthcare executive, and leaving a note talking about how this was designed to effectively terrorize people who are part of the healthcare system. That clearly was an act of terrorism. It was a politically motivated murder with the intent of driving terror into the hearts of people who are part of the capitalist system or part of the healthcare system. Well, the judge in this case, a person named Justice Gregory Caro, put out a statement explaining why the legal definition of terrorism was not met. The judge said, quote, "The defendant's apparent objective, as stated in his writings, was not to threaten, intimidate, or coerce, but rather to draw attention to what he perceived as the greed of the insurance industry." That is a permission structure for violence. That's what that is. Please, how would you define drawing attention to what you perceive as the greed of the insurance industry through murder? Definitionally terrorism. It wasn't to threaten, intimidate, or coerce, then why was someone murdered? I noticed that he didn't write an op-ed in The Nation about the healthcare system. He murdered a man. And he murdered a man with the intent, yes, to threaten, intimidate, or coerce people who are members of the healthcare industry. If you take this judge's argument and you extend it to literally any terrorist group around the world, it means that there is no such thing as terrorism. That's what it means. It writes the definition out of existence. Now you can say radical Islamic terrorist beheads a Wall Street Journal reporter. Well, he wasn't really meaning to threaten, intimidate, or coerce others. He was really attempting to draw attention to what he perceived to be Western intolerance. What a bunch of absolute sheer nonsense. 9/11 terrorists, under this definition, would not have been terrorists. Because, obviously, Osama bin Laden was just trying to draw attention to the predations of American foreign policy in Saudi Arabia, or some such nonsense. The permission structures for terrorism and violence, they are there. They are deeply embedded. They're embedded. It is largely relegated to the left, but there are some on the right who are willing to do this sort of stuff also. That's just the reality. This is why there were crowds outside of the courthouse when it was announced that Luigi Mangione, now he won't face life in prison without the possibility of parole. He won't. He could easily get out while he is still 50 or 60 years old, Luigi Mangione, after shooting a man in cold blood in the back and then in the back of the head. And here are people celebrating that in New York City on the streets. You wonder why Zohar Mamdani is going to be mayor? This is why. scavengers, demons. That's what this is. That's what this is. And I would like to remind you that there were people on the right who were angry at me when I said that the capture of Luigi Mangione needed to end with the death penalty for Luigi Mangione, and that anybody who celebrated the death of Brian Thompson was evil, was doing something evil. There are people on the right who objected to that, who tried to create permission structures. Well, yes, he shouldn't have done that, but, there are real grievances, and if you ignore those grievances, there are people on the right who did that stuff too. Again, it was largely relegated to the left. It was much more populist on the left, but there were some horseshoe theory people on the right who were doing that routine. Clearly doing, I write about it extensively in Lions and Scavengers. I write about that exact case. I use that as a key tipping point case for political violence in the United States. And you can see those permission structures emerging in the world's worst ways on social media. Social media has been a bane to our existence. It has. Social media has been a net bad. The algorithms controlled by the Chinese on TikTok are spinning up conspiratorial nonsense, violent ideologies day after day after day. X is a cesspool. Social media has become brain poison, brain rot for people who actually wish to think about things. That is how you end up with an Australian mental health advocate named Lizzie Page saying it's okay to laugh about Charlie Kirk. It's unspeakable what she says here.
I want to reiterate that it is not wrong or unethical or unkind to laugh at the misfortunes of terrible people. That Charlie Kirk incited violence. That's what he did. And then that came back to haunt him. That was his decision. So it's got nothing to do with the people who are laughing and joking about him becoming a human water fountain.
No depths in hell too low for people like this. And yet again, permission structures have been created. Joy Reid, who used to have a show on MSNBC, allegedly, I could never verify it because it had no viewers. She spent time praising a songwriter who wrote a song glorifying the murder of Charlie Kirk. Well, where are the permission structures coming from? Who knows? Who knows? If you didn't recognize it, those are all quotes taken out of context with regard to Charlie. Because Charlie had talked about the public policy discussions that have to happen around things like gun control. And that did not mean that he was non-sympathetic to the victims of people killed by guns, obviously. And if you go back and you read his comments about empathy, he makes a point that I've made many times before, which is that empathy and sympathy are two different things. It's not even a point made by Charlie. It's a point originally made by Paul Bloom, psychiatrist, who wrote an entire book about the problems and dangers of empathy, which is the idea that it's one thing to say, I feel terrible for you, how can I help? It's another thing to put yourself in somebody's shoes to the extent that their priorities become superior to all over other priorities. That makes for bad politics. That's the point that Charlie was making. These permission structures are quite real. And the media they're creating a new permission structure now because they're trying to find excuses for the shooter. They're trying to find some sort of sympathy for the shooter. And so, believe it or not, I read you the alleged text exchange between the shooter and his trans furry lover. And again, I just wish to reiterate here. Charlie Kirk was shot by a man who was gay and was in a relationship with his trans furry lover over Charlie being quote unquote hateful. If somehow you're having a discussion about any other issue today, I wonder at your priorities. I do. Well, here was ABC News covering what they called the touching text messages between the assassin and his gay lover. And by the way, you know that 1 year from now, there will be a movie out on Netflix about the beautiful relationship between the shooter and his gay trans lover and the evils of a Utah society that would not accept their forbidden love. You know that's going to happen. You know it will. The left can't help themselves. You know that's going to be a thing. Here we go.
And then those text messages, and I don't think I've ever experienced a press conference in which we've read text messages that are so fulsome, so robust, so apparently, allegedly self-incriminating, and yet on the other hand, so touching, right? With the suspect reaching out to his roommate, who is allegedly his boyfriend, who we understand identified as male at birth, now identifies as female. And the terminology he used, he was trying to protect him. He kept calling him my love. My reason for doing this is to protect you, but also asking him to delete the messages and not speak to law enforcement. So there's this heartbreaking duality that we're seeing very tragically playing out here.
Heartbreaking duality, star-crossed lovers. It's basically Dog Day afternoon. No, actually. This was a deranged, evil individual and his roommate, who sounds equally deranged, doing this. Again, the roommate got all these texts and did not turn this person into the police. The father turned this person into the police. And the media are covering this as though it's a story of beautiful Romeo and Juliet love that ended with the murder of an innocent 31-year-old father of two. You don't despise many in the legacy media enough, truly. Alrighty, coming up, we'll get to more Democrat reaction to all of the revelations about the shooter. Denial ain't just a river in Egypt. First, you know what's funny? When we started Daily Wire, we thought the hard part would be creating the awesome content. Well, it turns out dealing with all the behind-the-scenes stuff, hiring, HR policies, employee issues, that's the stuff that really eats up time. I know I'm not alone. When you're a business owner, every second of your time is incredibly valuable, so don't waste your energy and risk losing money. Focus on what matters most, running your business with help from Bambee. Here's what makes Bambee different. They give you access to your very own dedicated HR manager at a fraction of what it costs to employ somebody full-time. And get this, Bambee costs just $29 a month, whether you have 10, 75, even 100 employees. If I had Bambee when I was first building my team, it would have saved me countless hours and headaches. Instead of getting bogged down with paperwork and compliance issues, I could have focused on growing my show and connecting with my audience. With Bambee's HR Autopilot, you'll never have to waste your valuable time getting into the weeds of HR policies, onboarding, or terminations. Plus, Bambee is month-to-month, no hidden fees. You can cancel anytime. Right now, get 1 month of Bambee for just $1. Go to Bambee.com, type in Ben Shapiro under podcast to schedule your first call with an HR manager right now. That's 1 month of Bambee for just $1 at BAMBEE.com, Ben Shapiro podcast. Also, by the time the average person reaches 60, they've likely cycled through a lot of fad diets, juice cleanses, cabbage soup diets, raw food regimens, collectively losing, regaining several hundred pounds over the years. You've probably done it without knowing there's a name for it. Weight cycling. You lose 10 pounds. You feel great. And then slowly, or not so slowly, those pounds just kind of like come back. Well, half of Americans are stuck in that frustrating cycle. Doctors are now seeing it's not just disappointing, it can actually be dangerous. All that yo-yo dieting increases your risk of diabetes, liver problems, and heart issues. The truth is, most of us need more than willpower to break free from the pattern. That's where Lean comes in. Unlike those expensive GLP-1 injections, Lean is a non-prescription supplement created by doctors specifically for this problem. And the science behind it is solid. Lean tackles weight loss 3 ways that actually help you keep it off. 1, it keeps your blood sugar steady, so no more energy crashes that send you to the snack cabinet. 2, it controls cravings and that constant hungry feeling. And 3, it helps your body convert fat into energy instead of storing it. When your body gets better at burning fat for fuel, that's when you see lasting results instead of temporary losses. A lot of employees at Daily Wire are trying Lean. Gotta tell you, they're looking great. And they feel great as well. If you want to lose meaningful weight at a healthy pace and keep it off, add Lean to your diet and exercise lifestyle. Get 20% off when you enter Ben at takelean.com. That's code Ben at takelean.com. Montel Williams was on with Abby Phillip on CNN last night, and Montel did the same thing. There was a suggestion that actually maybe the real story here is that the MAGA dad is to blame. Because if only the MAGA dad had been, more accepting of his son in a sexual relationship with a gay trans furry, why would he possibly have objected? Who knows? It must just be biblical intolerance. And that's probably what drove all of this. If only he had just welcomed him home for a barbecue dinner while they all dressed up as dogs and pranced around the yard, then, that would have been, then all of this could have been stopped. Here we go.
I don't believe he was motivated politically. I think this was motivated emotionally. I think this was a emotionally stunted person who literally, when I say it this way, just hear me, tried to defend his significant other, not trying to defend some ideology.
Although I do think there's clearly an ideological difference. That's why I played about what they said about the family. The ideological difference that he was reacting to wasn't just Charlie Kirk. It was also maybe his dad. His father was, according to him, MAGA. So that conflict was there, clearly.
But this is a young man who's dating a person in transition. And I'm a conservative father, and I question, let's say, my daughter brought home the first guy that she brought home. I questioned the guy that she brought home. Was the dad questioning him politically? Is this a political motivation, or was this a psychological kind of thing?
Was it, maybe it was psychological. Maybe it wasn't political. Maybe it wasn't. When it comes to this issue, the political is the psychological, is the personal, obviously, for the shooter. Obviously, it's just excuse making. It's just excuse making. That's all. To try and treat with empathy a person who does murder because that person was in some sort of perverse relationship with a gay trans furry, which is what you are talking about here. And it is definitionally a perverse relationship when you are talking about murdering people you disagree with. And also, there are clearly issues of derangement when you are talking about a person who is enmeshed in a culture in which you dress up as animals for sexual pleasure while considering yourself a person of the opposite sex. Something is not normal. Can we say that? Or is that just driving more hate? Is that just driving more hate? You know, it's just driving more hate. And driving hate, as we have learned from our media and from our political leaders, our true political leaders, people on the left, we have learned that hate is what creates the incentive for murder. That's what creates the justification for murder. Well, some on the left continue to claim that actually we have no idea what the killer was. Jimmy Kimmel tried this routine on Monday night. It did not go amazing.
He had some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Everything that we can to score political points? Then we're trying to claim he wasn't one of us? Well, I mean, he was not. By all available evidence, as soon as the shooting happened. I mean, from the bullets, from the etchings on the bullets. Meanwhile, MSNBC's Brandy Zadrajny said, well, you know, when you say that people are celebrating, nobody's celebrating. Well, that's weird because I've played on the show. Many people celebrating. Many. And forget about the celebration. I've played mainstream political actors creating permission structures for murder. We've talked about it on the show. Again, I will go back to the New York Times, not once, but twice, treating Hassan Piker as an authority on Charlie Kirk. Hassan Piker, who has repeatedly and overtly justified terrorism, celebrated terrorism, called for violence against political opposition. That's the kind of people that I'm talking about. But apparently it's all in our imagination. It's a figment of our imagination, according to Brandy Zadrajny over at MSNBC.
If you look across media generally, you have seen a lot of people trying to grapple with Charlie Kirk's legacy and what that is as a right-wing agitator and as a provocateur and as, you know, a strategist and the most important GOP figure besides Donald Trump, arguably ever. And so, or right now. And so there's a lot of grappling to do, but to suggest that the internet is cheering for this is just the opposite. Total opposite of what's actually happening. It is.
Well, I mean, if by total opposite, you mean the absolute truth that the internet is cheering for this. A lot of people on the internet were cheering for this. There is just no question about that. It is just the reality. In the same way that there are brainworms on the internet that are spending their days marinating in conspiracy theories, even though, again, all the evidence is clear in this case, and we know who the person is and what they thought. And it is an enormous number of people on the left. Heather Cox Richardson, who is apparently the single most popular individual author over on Substack, wrote over the weekend, the alleged shooter was not someone on the left. The alleged killer, Tyler Robinson, is a young white man from a Republican gun enthusiast family who appears to have embraced the far right, disliking Kirk for being insufficiently radical. Rather than grappling with reality, right-wing figures are using Kirk's murder to prop up their fictional world. Briefly, they claimed Robinson had been radicalized in college. Then when it turned out he'd spent only a single semester at a liberal arts college, MAGA pivoted to attack those who allegedly had celebrated Kirk's death on social media. But there was literally no evidence presented that he actually was of the right. None. And believe me, there were plenty of people on the far right who hated Charlie. I mean, the Groypers, as I've said before, literally declared a Groyper war on Charlie Kirk. They declared that he wasn't sufficiently radical. It's exactly what I told Bill Maher on Friday night. He said, well, how do we know it's not the Groypers? I said, theoretically, could it be? Because before all of the evidence had come out, theoretically, it's possible. Super unlikely. And you know what I cited as the evidence? The contemporaneous conversations that the shooter had with family calling Charlie Kirk hateful. Because my point was, if you're calling Charlie hateful, that is part of a left-wing matrix of thinking. The Groyper matrix is Charlie wasn't hateful enough. He should have been more hateful. He should have been more vile toward the Jews. If only he had been, then they would have liked him. The excuse making is ridiculous. Ridiculous. Already coming up, Kash Patel of the FBI. He has a bunch of tete-a-tetes with Democratic senators. It gets spicy. First, do you guys ever read protein bar labels and feel like you're reading off the ingredients to a candy bar? A lot of health bars are packed with those unnecessary sugars, chemicals. My team and I, we've tried countless bars that either tasted, like trash or left us hungry again within an hour. Luckily, we then found Equip Foods Prime Bar. It's the first of its kind grass-fed beef protein bar with only real food ingredients and absolutely nothing to hide, with 20 grams of clean protein, which is a lot of protein. Starting today, my listeners will receive an exclusive discount on Equip's Prime Bar, which has become my team's favorite protein bar on the market, with 20 grams of protein made with just 11 clean ingredients like collagen and colostrum. These bars deliver 20 grams of grass-fed beef protein without the bloat. They're free from whey, seed oils, artificial additives. Plus, they're naturally sweetened with dates and honey, so they taste like dessert without any of the guilt. Justin is always walking around with these. Producer Justin, he's walking around with these, and they may be keeping him alive at this point. If you want to try the cleanest protein bar on the market that already sold out once, go to equipfoods.com/Ben Shapiro. Use code Ben Shapiro at checkout to get 25% off one-time purchases or 40% off your first subscription. Order for a limited time. That's equipfoods.com/Ben Shapiro. Use code Ben Shapiro at checkout. Also, did you know roughly 36% of Americans have below average credit scores, which can make borrowing more difficult and expensive? That means home loans, cars, and more. They're just continually out of reach. That's where Kickoff can help. Users with credit under 600 grew an average of 84 points in their first year with on-time payments. You can start building your credit right away for just $1 in your first month. The best part? AutoPay takes care of everything automatically, so you're building credit even while you sleep without ever having to worry about missing a payment. The whole sign-up process only takes a few minutes right from your phone. There's no credit check required. You can cancel whenever you want. No wonder it's the #1 credit builder on the App Store. Start building credit with Kickoff today. You can get your first month for as little as $1. That's 80% off the normal price when you go to getkickoff.com/Shapiro today. That's Kickoff without the K. Get KIKOFF.com/Shapiro. Must sign up via getkickoff.com/Shapiro to activate offer. Offer applies to new Kickoff customers first month only, subject to approval. Offer subject to change. Average first-year credit score impacted plus 84 points. Vantage score 3.0 between January 2023 and January 2024 for Kickoff credit account users who started with a score below 600, who paid on time, and who had no delinquencies or collections added to their credit profile during the period. Late payments may negatively impact your credit score. Individual results may vary. Well, yesterday, FBI's Kash Patel, he was testifying before Congress, and he said that there are a lot of people actually under investigation with regard to Charlie's shooting, because there was apparently an online Discord group that was mobilized around the shooter, had interactions with the shooter. As we mentioned on the show yesterday, many of the comments talked about the possibility of Charlie being assassinated on September 10th, which of course was the date that he was assassinated, but weeks in advance. Here's Kash Patel explaining.
Unfortunately, it has been leaked that there was a Discord chat, and for those unfamiliar with it, it's a gaming chat room online that the suspect participated in. So what we're doing, we've already done, is serve legal process, not just on Discord, so that the information we gathered is sustained and held in a evidentiary posture that we could use in prosecution should it be decided to do so. And we're also going to be investigating anyone and everyone involved in that Discord chat.
Okay, very good. I see the public reports that the Discord thread had as many as 20 additional users. It sounds like you're trying to run down all of that to see if that's accurate, who else may have been on that thread, what they may have known. Is that fair to say?
It's a lot more than that, and we're running them all down.
It's a lot more than 20?
Yes, sir.
And you're running all of that to ground?
Every single one.
Well, of course, that is necessary because these networks of people incentivize one another, for sure. And meanwhile, we have new information about the 71-year-old man who was initially arrested after Charlie's shooting. You remember the tape? He's an older man, balding, and he's wrestled to the ground. What exactly was he doing? Well, apparently, when he wasn't being arrested for possession of child pornography, which is another thing that happened to him this week, apparently, he was led away from the shooting scene in handcuffs, according to Breitbart, about an hour after the shooting. And that led many to believe he was the shooter. But he was instead charged with obstruction of justice because, apparently, police documents say that he allegedly screamed, "I shot him, now shoot me." And then when no officer shot him, Zinn again yelled, "I shot him, now shoot me." Then he explained he did this to draw attention from the real shooter, presumably, so that the shooter could escape. Apparently, Zinn has a long history of showing up and disrupting or being arrested at events ranging from political speeches to the Sundance Film Festival and other protests. Well, yesterday, in that Senate Judiciary Committee hearing that included Kash Patel, which we'll get to more of that in a moment, an FBI investigation was uncovered. Apparently, it was launched in the wake of the 2020 election, and it scrutinized nearly 100 Republican and GOP-aligned groups or people, including Turning Point USA, according to unclassified bureau files released on Tuesday. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley published those files related to the probe. It was codenamed Arctic Frost during a panel hearing, saying that the records revealed that Arctic Frost was much broader than just an electoral matter, and the investigation expanded to Republican organizations. According to Grassley, some examples of the group that Christopher Wray's FBI sought to place under political investigation included the RNC, Republican Attorneys General Association, and Trump political groups. And on that political list was one of Charlie Kirk's groups, Turning Point USA. So Arctic Frost wasn't just about politically investigating President Trump. It was also a way to improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. Apparently, Arctic Frost kicked off in April 2022 and focused on at least 92 Republican-linked entities like TPUSA. The investigation pursued lines of inquiry about purportedly false election fraud claims, fake elector schemes, frivolous lawsuits, financial fraud, and pressure on state officials to flip vote counts in President Trump's favor. It was unclear exactly what the basis of the inquiry was into TPUSA. But again, there's no justification that I can see here for why that was opened into TPUSA other than political animus. That's the point that Senator Grassley was making. Now, meanwhile, the Trump administration is looking at what it can do in the future to crack down on political violence, like Charlie's assassination. Marco Rubio is picking one pretty easy avenue. He is saying, listen, if you celebrate Charlie's assassination, we don't want you here. So if you're trying to come into the country, you have a bunch of memes on your phone celebrating Charlie's murder, well, guess what? You don't get to be an American and you don't get to be on our soil, which is totally appropriate. The great sin with Mahmoud Khalil was not the attempt to deport him. The great sin with Mahmoud Khalil is that he was led into the country in the first place, given his history of terror support. So if we can stop that before it starts, why wouldn't we? Here's the Secretary of State.
If you're a foreigner and you're out just celebrating the assassination of someone who was speaking somewhere, I mean, we don't want you in the country. Why would we want to give a visa to someone who thinks it's good that someone was murdered in the public square? It's just common sense to me.
Have you actually revoked any visas yet? Have you taken that action? And
well, we revoked visas of people. I don't know. We've revoked visas for people that are inside the country. We're most certainly been denying visas. I mean, think about it. I want everybody to think about this for a moment. Okay, you're out there celebrating the assassination in cold blood of someone, and then you want to come in. Why would we want anybody like that in our country as a tourist, as anything? We don't want them here.
That happens to be like an easy solve for importing new crazies into the United States, new evil people into the United States. But what would we do about the organizations that are already here? So the Trump administration, according to the Wall Street Journal, is moving swiftly to galvanize the outpouring of support for slain conservative activist Charlie Kirk into political momentum, as President Trump's advisors weigh a slate of executive actions targeting liberal organizations. Among the actions being discussed by the president's team, reviewing the tax-exempt status of left-leaning nonprofit groups and targeting them with anti-corruption laws, according to administration officials. The president could begin rolling out the actions as soon as this week. Officials across the administration are working to identify groups suspected of targeting conservatives or causes conservatives support. That could include looking at attacks on Tesla showrooms earlier this year, as well as people who have retaliated against law enforcement carrying out Trump's deportation campaign, adding that perpetrators could be categorized as domestic terrorists. So, again, this is not the administration saying that if you disagree with Charlie Kirk or disagree with Turning Point or disagree with President Trump, then now you're going to be arrested or your 501c3 status is going to go away. That is not what this is. This isn't the Tea Party scandal during the Obama administration. This is saying that if there are people who are violent and those people are funded by groups, then those groups ought to be looked at in terms of tax-exempt status and as well as anti-corruption laws. So we'll have to see what can be uncovered evidentiarily. Obviously, we want to be very careful when it comes to the application of law here. Want to make sure that you're actually going after people who are lawbreakers, not just people who are engaging in what Pam Bondi called hate speech the other day, and a gigantic boo-boo by the Attorney General suggesting that hate speech would be prosecuted in the United States. Not only is that unconstitutional, it happens to be a left-wing talking point. Because, of course, everyone has a definition of what hate speech constitutes. If the left were in charge, they would have characterized everything that Charlie was saying as hate speech, and then presumably sought to remove the nonprofit status of Turning Point USA. President Trump said on Monday that he might target George Soros and others under the RICO Act, right? That'd be the Racketeer Influencing Corrupt Organization Act. And he said he would consider designating the movement known as Antifa as a domestic terror organization, which should. Now, the Open Society Foundations claim that they don't fund or support violent protests. We will find out. There should certainly be full investigations because these people are getting their money from somewhere. But again, the biggest thing here is to be as meticulous as possible in pursuit of the policy. This is something my friend Chris Rufo has talked about. It is not enough to have the proper principles when it comes to going after the bad guys. You actually have to meticulously apply political and legal pressures in the right way, constitutional ways that don't violate core constitutional principles. Now, with that said, the attempt by the left to somehow suggest that you have a right in the United States to remain employed while saying terrible things about Charlie Kirk's murder, no, your employer has a right to fire you if you say things that your employer doesn't like. The question of cancel culture has always been about whether the employer is right to do so on a case-by-case basis. If you woke up this morning and you decided to tweet out, all black people should be killed, your employer has no obligation to continue employing you. None. If you woke up this morning and you said men are not women, well, it seems to me that it would be cancel culture to be fired for that, because that is not only well within the Overton window, as they say, the range of acceptable discourse, it is a mainstream normie political point of view. So, again, treating celebration of Charlie Kirk's murder as a sort of action that meets with no social consequence. Here's the thing. Social consequences can be good. Social consequences can be useful if applied correctly. If applied wrongly, they're wrong. But social consequences are very often the thing that people have to face in lieu of facing legal consequences. We don't want the government prosecuting speech. We do, however, want a space in the United States where we have conversations with people of opposing political points of view without celebrating their demise. And if you celebrate somebody's demise publicly, celebrate it, cheer it, justify it. Well, then, if you get fired from your job, that ain't cancel culture. That is just called normalcy. This is why the kind of full libertarian view when it comes to this sort of stuff, that no one should ever meet with consequences, social or otherwise, for their speech, is just a form of moral relativism. Not every piece of speech is created equal. Not every ideology is created equal. Not every culture is created equal. Some speech is better than other speech. Some things that are said are better than, like, the fact that we even have to make this argument shows how insane everything is, and how the very depixelated version of every argument becomes the one that sticks in everybody's mind. The cancel culture argument originally did not argue that there should never be social consequences for any speech at all. That at least was never the argument I was making. The argument I was making is that the Overton window had been shut so tightly by the left that perfectly legitimate speech was being treated as taboo and therefore punishable. But I never made the argument that if you're out there saying that slavery is good and we should go back to it, that you shouldn't meet with no social censure. That, of course, would be silly and morally relativistic. Okay, meanwhile, Kash Patel had a fraud hearing with the Senate Judiciary Committee yesterday. He went at it with Cory Booker. Cory Booker went after Kash Patel, and Kash Patel was having none of it. Cory Booker put on those angry eyes, just popped those in, Mr. Potato Head over there, and decided to go at it with Kash Patel. It didn't go amazingly for the senator from New Jersey.
I don't think you're fit to hand the bureau, but here's the thing, Mr. Patel. I think you're not going to be around long. I think this might be your last oversight hearing. Because as much as you supplicate yourself to the will of Donald Trump and not the Constitution of the United States of America, Donald Trump has shown us in his first term and in this term, he is not loyal to people like you. He will cut you loose. This may be the last time I have a hearing with you because I don't think you're long for your job. But I'm going to tell you this. I pray for you. I pray for you that you can step up and defend your oath, defend the Constitution, and do a much better job of defending this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you want to say anything?
Yes, sir. That rant of false information does not bring this country together. If you want to work on bringing this country, it's my time, not yours.
My God.
If you want to talk about
dividing this country,
it is
I
my
follow
time.
you on your social media posts that
It is
tear
my
this country
time
apart.
to address
There should be a
your
unifying-
falsehoods.
Oh,
You are an
you can
embarrassment
try all
to the
you
division
want
in this country.
to not take
Senator,
responsibility
it is my time.
for what
You
you
had your
have said.
time.
Sir, you're
Your
making a
time is
mockery of this
over.
committee. Sir, you don't tell me my time is over.
You
The
know how
people
far
of New
we've
Jersey
come
tell me
since
what my
Utah?
time is.
Senator,
You can't lecture me.
You can tell me
Sir,
my time's
you have-
over?
You may be the charge of the
I'm not
FBI,
going anywhere.
but I am not afraid of you,
Mr. Chairman.
Not afraid of you.
I'm not afraid of you, angry eyes. Woo-hoo-hoo. Man, maybe if he does some angry eyes, those poll numbers will spike all the way from 2% to 3% in those Democratic primary polls. Cory Booker. What a fraud he is. Meanwhile, speaking of frauds, Senator Adam Schiff, who was somehow able to bootstrap his way into a Senate seat by lying for many, many years about the president of the United States and his relationship with Russia that didn't exist. Well, he decided to go after Kash Patel. Also, Kash Patel was having none of it.
You want the American people to believe that? Do you think they're stupid?
No. I think the American people believe the truth, that I'm not in the weeds on the everyday movements of
you're not in
inmates.
the weeds?
What I am doing is protecting this country, providing historic reform, and combating the weaponization of intelligence by the likes of you. And we have countlessly proven you to be a liar in Russiagate, in January 6th. You are the biggest fraud to ever sit in the United States Senate. You are a disgrace to this institution and an utter coward.
I'm not surprised.
I'm not surprised that you continue to lie from your perch and put on a show so you can go raise money for your charade. You are a political buffoon at best.
Well, you can take an internet troll.
Take it to the bank that the FBI is protecting this country and the state and citizens of the California. We are bringing historic reform.
Point of order.
But all you care about is a child sex predator that was prosecuted by a prior administration, and the Obama Justice Department and the Biden Justice Department did squat. And what did President Trump do? Bring new charges courageously. And what have we done?
Chairman,
You said I'm the most transparent FBI director in history. 33,000 pages of information to you. I challenge you to say anything credibly to the truth. Go ahead and run to the cameras where you want to go now.
Well, Kash Patel's not wrong there. Can I make a recommendation? Like, just in all honesty, can I make a recommendation? Stop the televised hearings. Seriously. They are just grandstanding nonsense. Nothing gets done in them. No information is uncovered in them. And I speak as somebody who has been the social media beneficiary of televised hearings because it always turns into fireworks. And it's basically a show for the cameras. Nothing gets done here. It is a waste of taxpayer money. Seriously. Because all Adam Schiff is doing and Cory Booker is doing and all the rest, all they are doing is grandstanding for the cameras. It is not about actually eliciting new information. It is not about investigating. It is just about what you can do to get your donors back home to think that you're doing the things that they want you to do. That's all. It's a waste of time. And well, Kash Patel did make one other comment. This one set off the right. So Kash, of course, is not somebody who I think you can say, in all fairness, would be complicit in a gigantic rape cover-up by Jeffrey Epstein. And Kash Patel is about as right-wing as it's possible to get, about as anti-establishment as it is possible to get. And so if Kash Patel says that there is no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein was trafficking girls to others, then I believe him. Perhaps that makes me credulous, perhaps. And if so, and if evidence changes, then I'll be happy to revise my estimate and suggest that Kash Patel was engaging in a cover-up with regard to Jeffrey Epstein. However, so far as I am aware, the only allegations ever made that were not then retracted that Jeffrey Epstein trafficked women to other men was made by Virginia Giuffre. Virginia Giuffre was such a non-credible witness that prosecutors refused to use her as a witness against Jeffrey Epstein in his criminal case. And so basically what has been going on with the Epstein case, and I've said this from the beginning, is that I was perfectly open to any explanation for his behavior, for the allegations. I'm still open to explanations as to how he got all his money. But I'm not willing to call Kash Patel or Dan Bongino or the President of the United States or the rest of the administration liars because social media decided to expand the net of the actual credible evidence. So here is Kash Patel yesterday saying the thing you're not supposed to say, which is that there's no evidence that Epstein trafficked to other men, that he was charged for sex trafficking because he was trafficking women to himself, and so was Ghislaine.
You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
For the information that we have.
In the files?
In the case file.
Okay.
Well, this set off a firestorm online. How dare Kash Patel say this? Now he's a cuck. All the rest of this sort of stuff. I am weary. Honest to God, I am weary of all the conspiracism. I'm weary of it. You want to provide evidence? Go ahead and provide evidence. You want to call Kash Patel a liar? Then have the balls to just call him a liar, or call President Trump a liar. You want to do that? Go ahead and do it. But I'm beyond exhausted by all of the insane conspiracism that eats up X particularly every single day. It is wearying, it is exhausting, and it makes you stupid. It makes you stupid and credulous, and you will believe anything because you quote unquote believe nothing. Evidence should be the actual thing that you are asking for. And if you're not, you ain't just asking questions. You're just providing an argument without having to provide evidence. Meanwhile, the Fed is expected to cut rates today. This afternoon, Chair Jerome Powell is expected to announce at least 1 quarter-point cut. Traders are betting, according to the Wall Street Journal, on 2 more quarter-point cuts in both October and December. The feeling is that the market is softening, that inflation is at least relatively under control. It's pacing at about 2.5%, which again is too high. It's supposed to be 2%. In my opinion, it should be 0%. I think that inflation eats up savings. And I understand the argument that inflation causes people to spend, but I've always thought that it's a benighted idea that saving is somehow less preferential, less good for the economy than spending. That what we really need is a consumption-based economy. Savings generally tends to lead to investment by banks, for example, in the form of loans. In any case, the president's going to get what he wants. He's going to get a rate cut. He'll probably get a couple more rate cuts before the year is out. Is that enough to jog the economy? It certainly could be. What I really think is going to happen is it's going to keep inflating the upper end of the bubble. I think that all the tech companies are going to continue to have massive amounts of money pour into their stock coffers because of the expansion of the monetary supply into the economy through the lowering of the interest rates. If people believe they can get a 5% return on their investments and they can borrow from banks at 2.5% or 3%, then they're going to do it. Now, we're not at those interest rates yet. I couldn't remember what the actual Fed funds rate is, so I asked our sponsors over at Comet, a project of perplexity, what is the current Fed funds rate? How high are the average 30-year fixed mortgage rates right now? According to Perplexity, the current federal funds rate is 4.25% to 4.5%. The market's widely expected cut to the 4.00% to 4.25% range at today's Federal Reserve meeting. The average rate for a 30-year fixed mortgage right now nationally is about 6.24% to 6.3%, which is still a lot higher than it was, 10 years ago. But it's going down. It will likely go down more by the end of the year. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, all the policies of the Trump administration are geared toward at least getting innovation going again. We'll see whether that happens. Again, enormous amounts of money are waiting on the sidelines, don't know where to go, or are just pouring into AI. The president said something I thought was quite strange yesterday. He was asked about the Pope's statement that Elon Musk's trillionaire status somehow threatens global order and peace. Listen, I've met the current Pope. He seems like a truly kind-hearted person. That does not mean that his understanding of economics is well-informed. Income and wealth inequality is not, in fact, the problem. Poverty is the problem. And the basic and general idea that wealth inequality is in and of itself a generator of poverty is a lie. It is untrue. There are plenty of countries where everyone has an equal amount of wealth because they own nothing. That happens all the time. Elon's wealth, by the way, has been largely distributed to shareholders who own shares in Tesla. And the beneficiaries have been the public, which is able to buy Tesla cars. But our politics is a politics that is rife with populism at the moment. I'm not a populist. I think the populism is more an approach than it is an actual political program. And it seems to me that populism is largely based on the idea of the many against the few. And what it really, that's basically the definition. That's the definition. The many against the few. Now, there are certain cases in which there is an elite that controls an important institution that it ought not control. But when the idea is that the economy is controlled by an elite that is rigging it for its own benefit, unless you can cite evidence as to who those elites are rigging it to its own benefit. And there are cases where it happens, for sure. That's why I don't like crony capitalism. That's why I don't like self-dealing. That's why I don't like regulating yourself. There's a lot of things I don't like about the current way the American economy runs. But the idea that Elon Musk being very, very wealthy is innately a threat to you is wrong and problematic. But here was the president yesterday.
Criticize the fact that some CEOs make hundreds of times more in salary than average workers. He's worried about polarization. Yeah. Do you share that concern?
Well, I do say there's a big gap. I do say that. Don't forget, I'm a popularist. There is a big gap.
Okay, well, I mean, okay. Let's just be clear. You could redistribute the salary of the top CEOs in the country to the people that work at their companies. It would amount to a marginal increase in their income every year, like a very, very marginal increase. And the reality is, Tyler Cowen has written extensively about the supposed gap at the top end of the income spectrum for people who manage large companies. And the reality is that actually it is largely untrue. As Tyler Cowen has written, quote, there's another lesson from the numbers. CEOs are paid less than the value they bring to their companies. More concretely, CEOs capture only about 68 to 73% of the value they bring to their firms. He says, quote, I find the most convincing estimate of the gap between pay and marginal product to be that of Lucian Taylor at the Wharton School of Business. He finds that the typical major CEO captures somewhere between 44% and 68% of the value he or she brings to the firm, with the additional qualification that the CEO's contract offers some insurance value. That is, in bad times for the firm, the pay of the CEO won't be cut in proportion, but the CEO shares to a lesser degree on the upside. You won't find credible estimates suggesting that major CEOs taken as a group are capturing more than 100% of their added value. And the way that you can tell this is a CEO gets hired, does the value of the company go up or go down? So again, this seems to me the politics of envy. It seems to me populism very often when it comes to economics is the politics of the scavenger. It's all about just, oh my gosh, that CEO earns too much. It must be his fault that people are earning less. Factually untrue. That's not how economics works. In just a moment, we'll get to a big win for the Trump administration with regard to TikTok, a win that I'm quite hopeful actually could change the nature of political debate, which would be deeply necessary at this poisoned and cursed point in time. We'll get to that in just a moment. To listen to that, however, you do have to be a member. The show continues momentarily. If you are not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro at checkout. Get 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us. President Trump presents a groundbreaking path forward in the Gaza Strip. It is fascinating. We'll go through all of the details, plus Ta-Nehisi Coates attacking the memory of Charlie Kirk, and some updates from Argentina, actually. First, this October, we're giving Daily Wire Plus members more than you have ever received before, including must-see new documentaries like USS Cole, Al-Qaeda's strike before 9/11. It premieres October 10th exclusively at Daily Wire Plus. I've got your first look right here.
Al-Awali told us Al-Qaeda is planning to attack a U.S. Navy ship as it's refueling in the port of Aden.
There was a lot of warning out there to the ships. Did the Cole get that information? I can't tell you.
Bin Laden was getting very antsy. What could be next?
I don't think we missed any specific threats.
It wasn't if it was going to happen. It was when the United States was going to be attacked.
They were walking into a trap.
I saw a boat coming at us. They were close enough that I could see them smiling and waving. Then the explosion happened.
2 men in it was apparently not seen as a threat.
It may have been impossible to prevent.
Osama bin Laden had essentially declared war against the United States.
Certainly emboldened Al-Qaeda.
Why were we even operating in that port? What was the intelligence community doing?
No one connected all the dots until it was too late.
People in the U.S. didn't comprehend that there was an organization called Al-Qaeda. People living in caves, basements, who actively sought to kill Americans.
I think our government certainly had enough of the information to have done something.
They were focused totally on us. No one was looking up the chain of command.
We had an opportunity to disrupt what became 9/11.
USS Cole, Al-Qaeda's strike before 9/11. A 3-part series premieres October 10th on Daily Wire Plus.
USS Cole, Al-Qaeda's strike before 9/11 premieres October 10th only on Daily Wire Plus. Not a member yet? Right now, get 40% off new annual memberships with code FALL40 at dailywireplus.com. So yesterday, President Trump totally broke open the war in Gaza and perhaps put together a workable peace plan. Now, the President of the United States has received inordinate hatred for actually being good at foreign policy. Perhaps the best thing about President Trump's first term was his foreign policy. President Trump has always been heterodox in his foreign policy views, and that heterodoxy has actually served him quite well, particularly in the Middle East. He didn't get the credit he deserved over the Abraham Accords. He has not received the credit that he deserves for his continuing support of Israel in the face of genocidal hatred and terrorism from Hamas. And he has somehow drawn a fascinating path to peace in the Gaza Strip. Yesterday, he and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met for a long time before actually going out and doing a full press conference where they unveiled President Trump's peace plan, which has been signed onto by Israel, by the United States, by Qatar, by all of the regional players, and by the Europeans, which is an amazing achievement for the president. Now, let's be clear. Hamas has not accepted this deal yet, but this totally changes the game. Why? Well, because if everybody is on the same page but Hamas, that means that Hamas is totally isolated. And Hamas has relied on the kindness of strangers. Hamas has relied for this entire war on the PR of having Qatar on its side, of having other countries in the Middle East on its side, of having the Europeans on its side. I mean, just a week ago, we were talking about how the Europeans were moving steadily and not so gradually towards declaring a Palestinian state in the aftermath of the worst terror attack on Israel in its history and the worst attack on Jews since World War II. That is how badly things were going for Israel in sort of PR war. And that was because, of course, there is a strong drive among the suicidally empathetic, as the philosopher Gad Saad puts it, in Europe, to side with the people who wish to destroy Western civilization. But President Trump has now done something pretty incredible. He has put together a deal here that is workable, a deal that now has sign-off from the Israelis and from everybody else in the region, and even the Europeans are signed off on it. So I want to go through the deal here, because whenever you hear that a deal has been signed off on by everybody, the inclination is to say that it is a weak deal. That's just the reality. And indeed, when you read the deal, you will find points where certainly quibbles would be necessary. But overall, what President Trump has done here is he has achieved the strategic goals of the West. He has allowed Israel to achieve its strategic goals in Gaza if Hamas were to accept this deal, while allowing for a path forward. So what exactly is the deal? We're going to go through it in detail, and then we'll get to the press conference. So the White House's plan is a 20-point plan. First, Gaza will be a de-radicalized, terror-free zone that does not pose a threat to its neighbors. Now, that's more of a goal than it is an actual plan. Whether that goal is achieved depends on whether the rest of the plan is actually achieved. Gaza will be redeveloped for the benefit of the people of Gaza who have suffered more than enough. Again, more of a goal than a plan. If both sides agree to this proposal, the war will immediately end. Israeli forces will withdraw to the agreed-upon line to prepare for a hostage release. During this time, all military operations, including aerial and artillery bombardment, will be suspended, and battle lines will remain frozen until conditions are met for the complete staged withdrawal. Within 72 hours of Israel publicly accepting this agreement, all hostages alive and deceased will be returned. So that is to prevent Hamas from basically dragging out this process. If we get to 73 hours and Hamas has not handed over the live 20 hostages and the dead remaining 28 hostages, if that happens, then Israel will have every right and ability to go back in. Here is what a map looks like of what the lines of battle would look like if indeed this were to happen. So if Hamas were to accept, then essentially you have a small sliver of the Gaza Strip that is currently outside of the IDF's line of control. Even that is actually an old map. Israel's been moving so fast in Gaza City. They've essentially taken nearly all of Gaza City at this point. This is one of the reasons why it is possible that Hamas may accept a deal, because they don't exactly have a lot of leverage. The IDF has been doing extraordinary work in Gaza City with pretty much zero casualties at this point. The IDF has been capable of moving out of Gaza City more than 800,000 Gazan civilians who are trying to run roadblocks that have been put up by Hamas, who are shooting the civilians to prevent them from escape. In any case, on this map, as you can see, the blue line is a sort of rough idea of Israeli current control. Everything outside the blue line up to the black line is Israeli line of control. So a very small sliver of the Gaza Strip that is, quote unquote, outside the IDF's current line of control. And then there's a yellow line. That line shows where Israel would pull back to if the hostages were released, which would still leave the IDF in effective control of probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the Gaza Strip. And of course, they would still have some level of security oversight in the rest of the Gaza Strip as well. They're not simply going to pull back to that line and do nothing, you would assume. This is one of the mistakes that Israel made in the aftermath of their 2005 pullout from the Gaza Strip. They didn't just pull out completely. They also essentially cut their own intelligence tether, which was a massive mistake, which is why October 7th happened. That's something that Israel has not done in the so-called West Bank, Judea, and Samaria, where the IDF is constantly operational, at least in intelligence terms, even in areas that are governed by the Palestinian Authority titularly. Okay, then there's a red line. That red line shows the second withdrawal. That is when the sort of interim government is mobilized per standard set in President Trump's plan. And again, Israel would still retain a thick outline of the Gaza Strip in terms of security control. And then finally, there would be the third withdrawal. So if you get to the final endpoint of this conflict, and suddenly you have a workable government in the Gaza Strip, Israel would still retain a buffer zone at the edge of the Gaza Strip because, of course, they need that buffer zone. As they found out on October 7th, one of the big problems for Israelis is that the distance from terror centers in the Gaza Strip to actual civilian cities in Israel is minutes. This was the biggest problem on October 7th, is that once the fence was cut, you're talking about 100 yards from that fence to actual Israeli cities, Israeli towns, moshavim, that were overrun and destroyed, everybody killed. So Israel is going to have to retain some sort of security control over that buffer zone. Okay, so that's what the map looks like if all of the conditions are fulfilled. Coming up, more on the Gaza plan from the Trump administration and the press conference between President Trump and Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. First, when was the last time you bragged about your wireless company? Like, did you know my wireless company gave away 1,000 American flags to deserving vets and forgave $10 million in veteran debt? Did you know my wireless company raised almost $500,000 to prevent veteran suicide? When your wireless company is Pure Talk, there's a whole lot to brag about. You can even brag about the coverage you get with Pure Talk, a 5G network that is insanely fast, dependable, and secure. And you can brag about how much money you save with Pure Talk. Unlimited talk, text, 15 gigs of high-speed data. It's just $35 a month with mobile hotspot. And I'm constantly using Pure Talk. I'm traveling around a lot. You can see I'm not in my home studio. That means that I rely on Pure Talk wherever I go. You should do the same. It's time to switch to my wireless company, Pure Talk. But if you need another reason, something you actually can brag about, Pure Talk is the only wireless company that gives you a 1-year free membership to Daily Wire Plus when you go to puretalk.com/Shapiro. Again, choose a qualifying plan at puretalk.com/Shapiro and relish your free 1-year membership to Daily Wire Plus. Pure Talk, wireless worth bragging about. Go check them out again at puretalk.com/Shapiro and get that free 1-year membership to Daily Wire Plus as well. Also, I'm on the road. That means I'm not sleeping as well. Why? Well, because I don't have my Helix Sleep mattress. That's the mattress that was made just for me. See, here's the thing. If you toss and turn night after night, if you wake up with that aching back, you may have convinced yourself that that's what sleep is supposed to be, but it's not. You're supposed to get a mattress made just for you from Helix Sleep. Now, I easily fall asleep in minutes, even when there's a lot of stress happening in my life. What makes Helix different is they're not just selling you a random mattress. They actually match you with the perfect one for your body and sleep style. Whether you're a side sleeper, back sleeper, somewhere in between, they've got you covered. They make it so simple to get your best night's sleep every night. All you have to do is take their sleep quiz and get matched with a custom mattress based on your body type and sleep preferences. Trust me. When you find the right match, you'll wonder how you ever slept on anything else. Again, I rely on that Helix Sleep mattress. It is firm but breathable, which is what I need. When I don't have it, I don't sleep as well. Right now, Helix is offering an incredible Labor Day extended sale. Visit helixsleep.com/Ben to get 25% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com/Ben for 25% off site-wide. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. Again, just visit helixsleep.com/Ben for this exclusive offer. Okay, once all hostages are released, according to the Trump plan, Israel released 250 life sentence prisoners plus 1,700 Gazans who were detained after October 7th, including all women and children detained in that context. Now, let's be clear about this. That sort of language, women and children, Israel isn't picking up 5-year-olds. When they say children, they mean minors. Hamas continuously and routinely uses minors in battle. This is true all over the Islamic world. This kind of American division, Western division between people under the age of 18 and terrorists is a false division in many parts of the world where you have 12-year-olds with AKs. I mean, it's an unfortunate reality. I wish it weren't the case. It happens to be the reality. For every Israeli hostages whose remains are released, Israel will release the remains of 15 deceased Gazans. Now, again, this sort of math makes me insane. It has always made me insane. It is ridiculous for any Western country to trade live terrorists for hostages. This is the mistake that Israel made going all the way back to the Gilad Shalit deal, in which they exchanged one IDF soldier. They got back one IDF soldier, and in return, they released 1,000 Palestinian terrorists, including Yahya Sinwar, the architect of October 7th. But let's be real about this. There is support on the ground in Israel for this sort of a deal. Until Israel changes fundamentally its thinking about how hostage-taking works, this is going to be the kind of deal that Israelis are willing to cut. Upon acceptance of the agreement, full aid will immediately be sent into the Strip. At a minimum, aid quantities will be consistent with what was included in the January 19th, 2025 agreement regarding humanitarian aid, including rehabilitation of infrastructure, rehabilitation of hospitals and bakeries, and entry of necessary equipment to remove rubble and open roads. Now, again, this provision to me, that's a big give. The reason it's a big give is because it's unsafe. Okay, let's be clear. When you talk about restoration of full aid, including infrastructure help, before the actual restoration of security control, that is a risk. There's no question that's a risk. It's one of the big problems with aid in the first place. There's no aid cutoff before October 7th. There's plenty of food and materiel going into Gaza. All of it was used by Hamas to create the world's greatest terror center. Entry and distribution of aid, according to the plan, will proceed without interference from the two parties through the United Nations and its agencies and the Red Crescent, in addition to any other international institutions not associated in any manner with either party. Opening the Rafah crossing in both directions will be subject to the same mechanism implemented under the January 19th, 2025 agreement. Again, this should be a sticking point. Israel is giving a lot on this. The United Nations has been and will continue to be a tool for terrorism. It always has been. It will continue to be. So the fact that the aid distribution would happen thanks to the UN should be of little comfort to the Israelis. The idea that Israel isn't giving anything in this deal is silly. Of course, Israel is. Gaza, under the plan, will be governed under the temporary transitional governance of a technocratic, apolitical Palestinian committee responsible for delivering the day-to-day running of public services and municipalities for the people in Gaza. This committee will be made up of qualified Palestinians and international experts with oversight and supervision by a new international transitional body, the Board of Peace, which will be headed and chaired by the president, with other members and heads of state to be announced, including former Prime Minister Tony Blair. Again, this is sort of Israel's guarantee against the possibility that Hamas immediately reconstitutes and that the aid that flows in is somehow handed over directly to a reconstituted Hamas by another name. The idea would be that there is some sort of Western-chaired, quote-unquote, Palestinian body of peace, the Board of Peace. Now, in reality, it'll have to be run by Tony Blair with input from the United States, because the reality, unfortunately, is that there are not a whole hell of a lot of quote-unquote Palestinian moderates on the ground. And this brings us to the question of the Palestinian Authority. According to the Trump plan, this body will set the framework and handle the funding for redevelopment of Gaza until such time as the Palestinian Authority has completed its reform program, as outlined in various proposals, including President Trump's peace plan in 2020 and the Saudi-French proposal, and can securely and effectively take back control of Gaza. This body will call on best international standards to create modern and efficient governance that serves the people of Gaza and is conducive to attracting investment. Now, let's be real about that. It's never going to happen. The Palestinian Authority is corrupt top to bottom. Everybody, Arab and Jew, in the region knows this. This is not a secret. Okay, the reality is the Palestinian Authority is wildly unpopular in Judea and Samaria thanks to its incredible levels of corruption, thanks to the fact its leadership bilks the population and aid agencies out of literally billions of dollars. The PA is never going to end up governing Gaza. They can't even govern cities in the so-called West Bank, Nablus and Jenin and Hebron. They're not going to govern any of these areas. So this is a pipe dream. Presumably that pipe dream is put out there for the pleasure of various Arab nations who are signing on to President Trump's agreement here. The plan continues. A Trump economic development plan to rebuild and energize Gaza will be created by convening a panel of experts who have helped birth some of the thriving modern miracle cities in the Middle East. Many thoughtful investment proposals and exciting development ideas have been crafted by well-meaning international groups and will be considered to synthesize the security and governance frameworks to attract and facilitate these investments that will create jobs, opportunity, and hope for a future Gaza. So, again, what they're talking about here, presumably, is money flowing in from Qatar, from UAE, from Saudi Arabia. You would imagine American investment as well here. A special economic zone under the plan will be established with preferred tariff and access rates to be negotiated with participating countries. No one will be forced to leave Gaza. Those who wish to leave will be free to do so and free to return. We'll encourage people to stay and offer them the opportunity to build a better Gaza. Now, again, in reality, all of this is going to be dependent on decent governance. Unfortunately, it is just a fact that a vast majority of Palestinians support terrorism. There's literally zero evidence that Palestinians overall do not support terrorism. Doesn't mean every single Palestinian. Every poll statistic literally ever taken shows a vast bulk of Palestinian Arabs supporting terrorism against Jews and the destruction of the state of Israel. So this has created an intractable problem. that intractable problem can be solved by good governance. If, in fact, there is an area that is governed by a decent board of peace and safety and security is provided and jobs, then the goal is, hopefully, that people will become significantly more quiescent about their desire to destroy the Jews in the state of Israel and might be satisfied with, economically prosperous lives. That remains to be seen. Suffice it to say, there is going to be no forced population movement outside of the Gaza Strip, and the provision that is meant to allow people to leave who want to leave and then make them free to return if they wish to return, that means they can return to the Gaza Strip. And it treats the Gaza Strip as a home for a lot of these people, as opposed to the lie that's been told, which is that Haifa is their home or Tel Aviv is their home. According to the plan, Hamas and other factions agree not to have any role in the governance of Gaza directly, indirectly, or in any form. All military terror and offensive infrastructure, including tunnels and weapon production facilities, will be destroyed and not rebuilt. There will be a process of demilitarization of Gaza under the supervision of independent monitors, which will include placing weapons permanently beyond use through an agreed process of decommissioning, supported by an internationally funded buyback and reintegration program, all verified by independent monitors. New Gaza will be fully committed to building a prosperous economy and peaceful coexistence with their neighbors. A guarantee will also be provided by regional partners to ensure that Hamas and factions comply with their obligations and that New Gaza poses no threat to its neighbors or people. Now, again, this raises the question as to why Hamas would accept the deal. If effectively they're going to have no governance power in the Gaza Strip, why would they give up the hostages? And the answer is because if they literally have no hope, if it turns out that even their terror masters in Qatar, and let's be clear, Qatar plays both sides of the table, they always have, Qatar could have put pressure on Hamas to give up the hostages October 8th. They could have. Qatar did not do that. Instead, Qatar sponsored Hamas. Qatar played defense for Hamas. Qatar played both sides of the table, as they are apt to do. Well, now that is over. Qatar apparently has joined in on the process of isolating Hamas. That is the only reason why this has happened, and it is worthwhile noting. The reason that Qatar did that, at least in part, is because they are quite concerned that if this war continues, that Israel, which, as we'll see in a moment, committed not to attacking Hamas on Qatari territory, at some point, Israel, if the hostages continue to be held, will simply say, you know what, not worth it anymore. And they go into Qatar and they kill Hamas members in Qatar. So Qatar does not wish to be in the crossfire at this point. So that unsuccessful strike that Israel launched directly into Qatar to kill Hamas's leadership, it may have been tactically unsuccessful, but it was strategically successful in putting pressure on the Qataris to actually join in on the international consortium dedicated to ending Hamas rule over the Gaza Strip. And that'd be the only reason why Hamas would give up the ghost here. The plan continues. The United States will work with Arab and international partners to develop a temporary international stabilization force to immediately deploy in Gaza. The ISF will train and provide support to vetted Palestinian police forces in Gaza and will consult with Jordan and Egypt, who have extensive experience in this field. The ISF will work with Israel and Egypt to help secure border areas, along with newly trained Palestinian police forces. A deconfliction mechanism will be agreed upon by all of the parties. Now, again, what's important there is that this international stabilization force will not be a non-transparent force. It will have coordination, including Israel. Israel is simply not going to give up all eyes on the ground and trust that the Egyptians and Jordanians, all of whom have been acting, by the way, in tacit consultation with Hamas throughout this conflict, Israel isn't going to give up any capacity to actually police this area, given what happened on October 7th. As part of the plan, Israel will not occupy or annex Gaza. As the ISF establishes control and stability, the IDF will withdraw based on standards, milestones, and timeframes linked to demilitarization that will be agreed upon between the IDF, ISF, the guarantors in the United States, with the objective of a secure Gaza that no longer poses a threat to Israel, Egypt, or its citizens. Practically, the IDF will progressively hand over the Gaza territory it occupies to the ISF. Now, again, that's very gradual because Israel isn't going to give over that territory until they feel safe. Now, if Hamas delays or rejects this proposal, the above, including the scaled-up aid operation, will proceed in the terror-free areas handed over from the IDF to the ISF. So in other words, this plan is going into place whether or not Hamas agrees. So the areas that Israel has already cleared will end up being turned over to the ISF anyway. It will end up being held by this international consortium. So the only question is whether the areas that are quote-unquote outside Israeli control, namely those areas on the coast along the Mediterranean, whether Hamas gives up the ghost in those areas. But every place else this plan is happening, whether Hamas likes it or not. An interfaith dialogue process will be established based on the values of tolerance and peaceful coexistence to try and change the mindsets and narratives of Palestinians and Israelis by emphasizing the benefits that can be derived from peace. Okay, good luck with that. And finally, while Gaza redevelopment advances and when the PA reform program is faithfully carried out, the conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood, which we recognize as the aspiration of the Palestinian people. Now notice what that isn't. That is not a recognition of a Palestinian state. That is not even a recognition of a real pathway toward a Palestinian state. It is a recognition that if gigantic changes happen on the ground and the Palestinian Authority somehow moderates and somehow does all of the reform, and that if all of these hurdles are jumped, then maybe at some point there's a pathway to a Palestinian state. Now again, good luck with that. What this doesn't do is say there must be a Palestinian state in order for there to be a settlement in Gaza. That obviously is untrue. And the Trump administration is making no bones about that. And now neither is the international community. They're not saying that as a sort of prerequisite to a peace agreement in Gaza or to an end to the war, there has to be a Palestinian state, which is something very different than Emmanuel Macron, fool, Keir Starmer, fool, and the Spanish government, fools, have been saying. So, again, overall, it's a plan where there's some give and there's some take, but this is the best plan that has been presented, or the best plan likely to be presented. Now, before the actual presser happened between President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, there was a meeting between Trump and Netanyahu in the Oval. And during that meeting, Prime Minister Netanyahu called up the Prime Minister of Qatar and essentially apologized for the strike inside Qatar, according to the White House's readout. The president expressed his desire to put Israel-Qatar relations on a positive track after years of mutual grievances and miscommunications. As a first step, Prime Minister Netanyahu expressed his deep regret that Israel's missile strikes against Hamas targets in Qatar unintentionally killed a Qatari serviceman. He further expressed regret that in targeting Hamas leadership during hostage negotiations, Israel violated Qatari sovereignty and affirmed that Israel will not conduct such an attack again in the future. Now, again, do I like this on a moral level? I do not. Qatar has literally, to this day, never condemned October 7th. So, and of course, they've been holding all of the Hamas leadership there. They've been paying them lots of money. They've been keeping them in five-star hotels. They've funded Hamas to the tune of billions of dollars. It's an ugly thing that Netanyahu had to do on a political and moral level here. But if that's the precondition to get to the agreement, that is what it is. And getting Qatar on board to pressure Hamas apparently required this as some sort of prerequisite. Prime Minister Al-Thani welcomed these assurances, emphasizing Qatar's readiness to contribute meaningfully to regionally secure and stable negotiations. And Prime Minister Netanyahu agreed to the same. Now, it's a little bit different than the readout from the Prime Minister of Israel. Apparently, he said, quote, Netanyahu said this to the Prime Minister of Qatar. I want you to know that Israel regrets that one of your citizens was killed in our strike. I want to assure you that Israel was targeting Hamas, not Qataris. I also want to assure you that Israel has no plan to violate your sovereignty again in the future, and I have made that commitment to the president. I know your leadership has grievances against Israel, and Israel has grievances against Qatar, from support for the Muslim Brotherhood to how Israel is portrayed on Al Jazeera to support for anti-Israel sentiment on college campuses. I welcome the president's idea to establish a trilateral group to address both our countries' outstanding grievances. Okay, so bottom line is, all of that seems to be at least a little bit for show. And what I mean by that is not that Israel is going to attack inside Qatar again, but if you're going to get everybody back on the same page, you have to say some pretty words about a trilateral commission and how everybody's going to get along in the future. Now, let's be clear. If Qatar continues to be a supporter of Hamas and into the future, it is no longer guaranteed that negotiations will take place or negotiations break down or Hamas continues to hold hostages. It's possible that that all goes sideways as well. Okay, so all of this culminated yesterday in a major press conference between the President of the United States and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. President Trump, again, he's a transformative leader, particularly in the Middle East. He seems to understand at a gut level what works in the Middle East, namely power. One of the most asinine notions about the Middle East that's been pressed forward by the State Department for literally decades, by the Europeans for a long time, is that moral suasion is the language of the Middle East. That is ridiculous. Moral suasion has never been the language of the Middle East. Moral suasion may be a language that is spoken in Europe. It may be a language that's spoken in the halls of Congress or in the halls of the White House. It is not a language that is spoken in the Middle East. In the Middle East, it is all about power. And that is something that President Trump innately understands. His background in real estate negotiation here comes in extremely handy. And so what he really understands here is that Israel is the military powerhouse of the region, that Israel is the technological powerhouse of the region, that an American-Israel alliance, which has been highly beneficial to both sides, The United States has gained massively in terms of its technological capability, particularly military capability, through cooperation with Israel. Its intelligence base in the Middle East is significantly stronger based on Israel. Israel has been described as a sort of aircraft carrier that is land-based in the Middle East. America does not pay for bases in Israel. America does pay Qatar a lot of money for its bases in Qatar and pays Saudi a lot of money for its bases in Saudi. Qatar then contributes some of that money back because, of course, that is a form of bribery that the Qataris try to use on Americans. But America pays billions of dollars for bases in Japan and Germany and all over the world. The United States does not pay billions of dollars for, quote unquote, a base in Israel. So that mutually beneficial relationship between Israel and the United States has grown into the Abraham Accords, bringing in UAE, bringing in Morocco, bringing in Bahrain, bringing in a bunch of countries in the Middle East, and that is only going to grow in the aftermath of this. Alrighty, coming up, we'll get to more from this amazing press conference between President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over a possible peace plan in the Gaza Strip. First, you know what I hate? Running out of something I actually need and then having to scramble to reorder it. Usually only remember that after you need it. And when it comes to your health, consistency is the difference maker. And that's why I signed up as a Balance of Nature preferred customer. Every 28 days, my supplements just show up at my door without me even lifting a finger. No missed days, no, crap, I forgot to reorder. It's automatic, so it's consistent, and consistency means it sticks. Here's what really got my attention. As a preferred customer, you're always getting the best price Balance of Nature offers. This is as low as it gets, every single order. Your wallet will notice the difference, guaranteed. And get this, shipping is completely free every month. No tracking numbers to stress about, no extra fees. Balance of Nature handles all of that for you. Here's my favorite part. You get paired with your own personal health coach, not a chatbot like an actual human who checks in with you, helps you stay on track, looks at your whole picture. When I'm on the road particularly, I need my Balance of Nature, and that means I need those regular deliveries. Why pay more when you don't have to? It saves you money, time, and hassle. You don't have to plan ahead because your routine actually plans itself. Go to balanceofnature.com, use promo code Shapiro for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer, plus get that free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com, promo code Shapiro. Also, let's talk about Cars for Kids. You know the name. You probably can't not hear the name right now. Cars for Kids, with a K. That's right, you're thinking of the song, aren't you? Well, you have a car you don't need, guess what you do with it? Cars for Kids. You've got 2 cars and you only drive one? Cars for Kids. You got a car you swear you're going to sell, but you actually haven't listed it in 6 months? Just donate it to Cars for Kids. Here's how it works. You go to carsforkids.org/Ben. That's Cars with a K. You fill out a simple, quick form. They pick up your car for free. You get a tax deduction and a vacation voucher, and kids, real kids, actually get the benefit. That's the cycle. Cars for kids, help kids. Right? It's like actually very easy. Cars for kids, you help the kids. Look, you can keep ignoring that extra car, or you can actually make it count for something. And the way you make it count, say it once more, Cars for Kids. Go to carsforkids.org/Ben right now to donate. carsforkids.org/Ben. Again, that's Cars with a K. You just got that car hanging out on your driveway doing nothing. Now's the time to make it happen. Head on over to carsforkids.org/Ben. That's Cars for Kids, Cars with a K, .org/Ben to donate. So President Trump spoke from the White House, and he pointed out, as always, this is true, that if you choose to work with successful countries, you are likely to be more successful. And if you seek to destroy those successful countries, you are likely to fail. Here is the president talking about Middle Eastern relations.
History has shown us that those who have relations with Israel have thrived, while those who have devoted resources and attention toward the destruction and even annihilation of Israel have languished. They haven't done well.
Okay, so that, of course, is just descriptively true. That is a descriptively true situation. That the countries that have worked hand in glove with Israel are doing better. The ones that do not work with Israel have been doing worse. Which is why the Abraham Accords, despite all of the pressures of the last couple of years, have held. Meanwhile, President Trump reported on the conversation between Netanyahu and the Qatari PM.
I'm pleased to report that earlier today we took another important step toward greater understanding of the region. A short time ago, we had a historic phone call in the Oval Office with Prime Minister Tani, who's really a great person. So we had a great talk, and I was on the phone, and Bibi was talking. Prime Minister Al-Thani was of Qatar. They really had a heart-to-heart conversation. It was a great conversation, I thought. It was productive. It was everything that you need to have something turn out to be successful. And I want to thank Bibi, and I want to thank the Prime Minister. It was fantastic.
Okay, so Again, that is President Trump simply setting the groundwork for what's to come next. So he's very optimistic at the possibility that something happens here. He says this is potentially one of the greatest days ever. The president is fond of superlatives.
So this is a big, big day, a beautiful day, potentially one of the great days ever in civilization. Things that have been going on for hundreds of years and thousands of years. At least we're at a minimum very, very close, and I think we're beyond very close. And I want to thank Bibi for really getting in there and doing a job. We've worked well together, as we have with many other countries, both of us, with many other countries, which is the only way this whole situation gets solved. And I'm not just talking about Gaza. Gaza is one thing, but we're talking about much beyond Gaza. The whole deal, everything getting solved. It's called peace in the Middle East.
Okay, and the president, of course, does want to see the Abraham Accords expanded to include places like Saudi Arabia, which would be, of course, the big move here. And with Saudi signed on to the deal, with Egypt and Jordan signed on to the deal, with all the rest of the countries in the region signed on to the deal, up to and including Turkey, by the way, the ground is set for something much broader to happen here, should Hamas accept the deal. And if they don't, then Hamas is totally isolated diplomatically. Now, what that really means practically, as we'll get to in a little while, is that Israel will have to simply enforce the plan without regard to Hamas. Whether they get the hostages back or not, they're going to move toward implementation of this plan. They'll finish off Gaza City. They'll continue the establishment of humanitarian enclaves. That a counterinsurgency will then take place, but major war-fighting operations will essentially be over. This plan is going into place one way or another. That is just the reality of the situation. Something like this plan is going to happen. President Trump starts off by explaining the moral background here, which does, in fact, make a difference because while the president understands that power governs in the Middle East, he also understands where the moral calculus lies. And the answer is the onus is on Hamas. And the president has done something truly incredible here, which is to mobilize the entire world against Hamas. That actually does take a lot. That takes a lot. And the president has put his force and power behind that. Good for him.
Let us not forget how we got here. Hamas was elected by the Palestinian people. Israel withdrew from Gaza thinking they would live in peace. Remember that a long time ago, they withdrew. They said, you take it. This is our contribution to peace. But that didn't work out. That didn't work out. It was the opposite of peace. They pulled away. They let them have it.
Okay, well, he's right about that. And then he points out that Hamas has been using human shields, and he urged Palestinians to condemn Hamas. Again, these are points that very few presidents would make because most of them have been captured by the idea that if you soft sell the actual situation in the Middle East, you're better off. President Trump is a man, when it comes to the Middle East, of hard truths, and here he is.
Instead of building a better life for the Palestinians, Hamas diverted resources to build over 400 miles of tunnels and terror infrastructure, rocket production facilities, and hid their military command posts and launch sites in hospitals, schools, and mosques. So if you went after them, you'd be after them, and you wouldn't even realize you ended up knocking out a hospital or school or a mosque. That terrible thing, terrible way to have to fight. No fight is good, but that's a real bad one. So there are many Palestinians who wish to live in peace. Many. I've seen so many of them. And they have support. And I challenge the Palestinians to take responsibility for their destiny, because that's what we're giving them. We're giving them responsibility for their destiny, fully condemn and prohibit terrorism and earn their way to a brighter future.
Well, this is right. This is right. And the stupidity of the Europeans who have basically said that we are going to simply drop a declaration of a state upon you without any actual changes in behavior, mentality, or future orientation, that is wildly counterproductive. What Trump is saying here is you earn your way to a state. If you want a state, you're going to actually have to, develop the instinct that leads toward productivity and mutual coexistence as opposed to destruction. I mean, whether or not you like it, that happens to be true. President Trump said that the goal here is to end the military capabilities of Hamas.
Under the plan, Arab and Muslim countries have committed, and in writing in many cases, but I actually would take their word for it, the people I mentioned, I'd take their word for it, to demilitarize Gaza, and that's quickly. decommission the military capabilities of Hamas and all other terror organizations. Do that immediately. And we're relying on the countries that I named and others to deal with Hamas. And I'm hearing that Hamas wants to get this done too, and that's a good thing. And destroy all terror infrastructure, including the tunnels, weapons, production facilities. They have a lot of production facilities that we're destroying.
Well, again, all of this is right. So the president spelled out much of what we've already discussed. He said that if Hamas agrees, all hostages will be released within 72 hours.
If accepted by Hamas, this proposal calls for the release of all remaining hostages immediately, but in no case more than 72 hours. So the hostages are coming back, and I hate even saying this from the standpoint, doesn't sound right, but it is so important to the parents. The bodies of the young men, I believe in almost all cases, the young men are coming back immediately.
Okay, so, again, the president trying to push this thing forward, and he says, what's the stick? So this is the carrot. Right, the carrot is an Israeli pullback, a transitional government, aid packages to rebuild the Strip, all the rest of this. The stick is, if Hamas rejects it, then Israel has his full backing to do whatever Israel has to do to finish the job, which will happen in short order, by the way. Again, the underrated part of all of this is that Israel's military, the IDF, has done such an extraordinary job in the Gaza Strip, particularly in places like Rafah and now in Gaza City, where they're moving in heavily urban environments, and they've cleared hundreds of thousands of civilians from the area, literally almost 1 million civilians from the area of the Gaza City, in order to prevent their casualty, in order to prevent their deaths. And now their armory is moving through Gaza City like a hot knife through butter. Here is President Trump saying, listen, they don't have a lot of choices on the table. If they reject it, Israel's going to finish it anyway.
If they're unable to do so, then Israel would have the absolute right and actually our full backing, the U.S. full backing. Marco's here, and a lot of our leaders are here, our great Vice President, Susie Wiles, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner. They've been so involved in this process. I don't think anybody else could have done it or even come close, but it's we're right there. We're right there. First time in thousands of years, I think you can probably say, if you really look into it, if you study back, if you're a scholar, you would say thousands of years. Israel would have my full backing to finish the job of destroying the threat of Hamas.
Okay, well, again, this is the proper response by President Trump. He also points out, again, he's putting responsibility where it lies. He says the Palestinian Authority, right, they supposedly have been pursuing peace, which, of course, is a gigantic lie since Oslo. One of the greatest diplomatic failures of all time, the Oslo Accords, a giant mistake by people on all sides of the good-hearted. Huge mistake by Israel, huge mistake by the United States. The Oslo Accords, one of the great disastrous agreements in the history of diplomacy. But the Palestinian Authority has been lying for some 30 years. Mahmoud Abbas, who is now almost 90 years old, and the last election that was held for Mahmoud Abbas as president, I believe, took place in 2006. So he's currently in the 19th year of a 4-year term, Mahmoud Abbas. And the idea is that they are somehow going to reform. Yeah, good luck with that. President Trump says, listen, if they don't complete the reforms, that's on them. That's their problem.
If the Palestinian Authority does not complete the reforms that I laid out in my vision for peace in 2020, they'll have only themselves to blame. We're giving them an amazing footprint, and they have amazing support from the leaders of the Arab world and the Muslim world, the great leaders. These are great leaders. These are unbelievable leaders that have built great countries and very wealthy countries. What the future holds for the Palestinians, no one really knows, but the plan that we put forward today is focused on ending the war immediately, getting all of our hostages back, getting everything back. Hard to believe when you even say it, and creating conditions for durable Israeli security and Palestinian success.
Now, again, all this is praiseworthy. It wouldn't be a full Donald Trump press conference without a couple of traditional Trumpisms. One of my favorites, he announced an international oversight board starring Donald J. Trump. This is pretty solid Trump here.
To ensure the success of this effort, my plan calls for the creation of a new international oversight body, the Board of Peace, we call it, the Board of Peace, sort of a beautiful name, the Board of Peace, which will be headed, not at my request, believe me, I'm very busy, but we have to make sure this works. The leaders of the Arab world and Israel and everybody involved asked me to do this, so it would be headed by a gentleman known as President Donald J. Trump of the United States. That's what I want, is some extra work to do, but it's so important that I'm willing to do it, and we'll do it right, and we're going to put leaders from other countries on, and leaders that are very distinguished leaders, and we'll have a board, and one of the people that wants to be on the board is the UK former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, good man, very good man, and some others, and they'll be named over the next few days.
And so, that was not his best Trumpism. I had to save his best Trumpism for last. That was his pronunciation of the Abraham Accords. What he's trying to do here, by the way, is that in Hebrew, Abraham is pronounced Avraham. And he's sort of doing an American version here, which is good stuff here from the president.
In addition to negotiating the Abraham Accords, I like to say it that way because the real people, that's what they call Abraham. I would say Abraham, but it's so much nicer when you say Abraham. So much more elegant.
Solid stuff there from the president. Alrighty, coming up, we'll get to more from this press conference, plus the United States talking about a gigantic loan to Argentina. Why? I'll explain. First, there is a tragedy unfolding in America like right now, and someday future generations are probably going to see it in a similar light. Every single day, about 3,000 pregnancies end in abortion. Currently, 1 in 4 pregnancies does not make it to birth. Unlike past horrors, in this moment, you actually can do something. It's happening like right now across the country. Preborn network clinics are standing with women in the darkest hours of uncertainty. They offer genuine compassion, practical help, and the resources needed to empower women to make informed choices. This year alone, their efforts have helped rescue more than 38,000 babies, each one a life given a chance because someone cared enough to be there and to help. A single moment, such as a mom seeing her baby on an ultrasound screen, can change everything. It's powerful. Studies show this simple act can double the likelihood a woman will choose life for her child. These clinics aren't just saving lives, they're offering hope and support when it's needed the most. So, the question comes full circle. If you knew you could make a difference and save lives today, wouldn't you choose to do something? You can. Right now, just $28 provides a life-saving ultrasound. Head on over to preborn.com/Ben. That's preborn.com/Ben, or dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. That's pound 250 baby. Also, when inflation jumps, when you hear the national debt is over $37 trillion, have you ever thought, hey, maybe I should buy gold, like right now? Well, I thought that, and so I did, because, I am kind of concerned about all of those things. Whether to protect against the dollar's loss in purchasing power, the peace of mind during global instability, or just sensible diversification, Birch Gold Group believes every American needs to own some physical gold. And so along with the Daily Wire, Birch Gold has created something special this month. Through September 30th, if you buy from Birch Gold, you will get a signed copy of my brand new book, Lions and Scavengers, plus your very own golden Ben Shapiro bookmark. The bookmark looks great, by the way. We released an extremely limited quantity of the autographed books and bookmarks, so text Ben to 989898 to claim your eligibility and start the process. Plus, Birch Gold can help you roll an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and you're still eligible for a signed copy of Lions and Scavengers. I buy my gold from Birch Gold, so do tens of thousands of other Lions. Would now be a good time to do it? Again, they make it really, really easy. You call them up, you ask all your questions, they facilitate the process, and now you got gold in your safe. I have some in my safe. Text my name, Ben, to 989898. Claim your eligibility today. Act before September 30th. Again, text Ben to 989898. So, Prime Minister Netanyahu, for his part, the truth is that Prime Minister Netanyahu is making some political sacrifices here. The right wing of his coalition in Israel is not on board with many of the provisions here. Provisions ranging from the possibility of a reformed Palestinian Authority to the fact that the Prime Minister of Israel recently announced in consolidation with the United States that he would not immediately be moving to annex Judea and Samaria, which has been a long-time goal of the right-wing bloc in Israel, recognizing the reality, which is that there will be no Palestinian state in Judea and Samaria, nor, by the way, should there be. So it is not as though Netanyahu isn't taking political risk on his side. He certainly is. He made the point yesterday at this press conference with the president that his 5 goals that he had spelled out a little bit earlier last month, that those goals are being met in the negotiations that were signed off on by Israel yesterday.
All our hostages, both those who are alive and those who died, all of them, will return home immediately. Hamas will be disarmed. Gaza will be demilitarized. Israel will retain security responsibility, including a security perimeter for the foreseeable future. And lastly, Gaza will have a peaceful civilian administration that is run neither by Hamas nor by the Palestinian Authority.
Okay, so, again, he's right about that. He also points out that if Hamas rejects the plan, well, then the job's just going to get finished.
But if Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, or if they supposedly accept it and then basically do everything to counter it, then Israel will finish the job by itself. This can be done the easy way, or it can be done the hard way, but it will be done. We prefer the easy way, but it has to be done. All these goals must be achieved because we didn't fight this horrible fight, sacrifice the finest of our young men to have Hamas stay in Gaza and threaten us again and again and again with these horrific massacres.
Now, by the way, overall, the levels of support in Israel for Trump's plan are extremely high. They're very, very high. And so the only obstacle now is whether Hamas agrees or not. Prime Minister Netanyahu had words of praise for President Trump. Again, these were harsh negotiations. I mean, again, I know a lot of people on all sides of the table in this particular negotiation. The idea here that everything was sort of hunky-dory, that it was an easy negotiation, that there weren't sacrifices made on all sides, it's not true. It was a very hard-nosed negotiation taking place between the White House and the Israeli administration. Netanyahu had words of praise for President Trump.
While you focus at home on making America great again, your leadership abroad is changing the world for the better, ending wars and advancing peace. I believe that today we're taking a critical step towards both ending the war in Gaza and setting the stage for dramatically advancing peace in the Middle East.
Obviously, not only is that a good thing, one of the things that's unique right now, and again, I point this out, this plan has the support of everyone. Okay, this is not a unilateral American plan. It's not a unilateral Israeli plan. It is a plan with everyone's support, which is, again, kind of a jujitsu here by the Trump administration. A joint statement by the foreign ministers of Egypt, Jordan, UAE, Indonesia, Pakistan, Turkey, Saudi, and Qatar says, quote, "We welcome the announcement by U.S. President Trump of his proposal, which includes ending the war, rebuilding Gaza, preventing the uprooting of the Palestinian people, and promoting comprehensive peace." Can you imagine that statement a week ago? The president of Turkey, Tayyip Erdogan, who is awful, who is a dictator, who is in many cases a pro-Islamist dictator. He is backing the HTS regime in Syria, which it is yet to be decided whether that regime is going to moderate or whether they just remain a terrorist regime. He said, quote, "I praise the efforts and leadership of President Trump, whose goal is to stop the bloodshed in Gaza and achieve a ceasefire. Turkey will continue to contribute to the process to establish a just and lasting peace accepted by all parties." It is truly amazing that somehow the media have tried to suggest that President Trump, when it comes to the Middle East, is incompetent compared to Barack Obama or literally anyone else. Donald Trump is the most competent leader in American history when it comes to the Middle East. It is not particularly close. Meanwhile, in other big foreign policy news, the President of the United States is prepared to give a $20 billion financial lifeline to Argentina. The reason he is doing that is because obviously Argentina was in basically disastrous financial position. They're going bankrupt every 5 minutes. And then Javier Milei, the president of Argentina, was elected. And he's been taking extraordinary austerity measures, restructuring the entire economy. However, one of the big problems is that everyone is sort of afraid that eventually Milei is going to lose an election. If he loses an election, then any investment you make in Argentina immediately is going to get flushed down the toilet. So right now, we are essentially doing a Marshall Plan for Argentina. We are essentially helping float Argentina to the point of financial stability so that they are, in the future, a free market-oriented, Western-oriented, America-oriented country. And there are people who are treating this as though this is somehow terrible. No, this is actually quite good. This is significantly better than allowing Argentina to once again fall into the hands of left-wing agitators, left-wing dictatorial types who work in cahoots with Russia and China. This is the way foreign policy works. The Marshall Plan was a good idea. It kept Western Europe out of the hands of the communists, and this is a good idea as well. According to the Washington Post, the U.S. intervention stems from a blend of political and economic considerations. This month, Milei's party was trounced in provincial elections in Buenos Aires, raising doubts about his ability to retain a legislative majority in the October 26th midterm elections. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said Milei needs a bridge to the election so he can win a renewed mandate for reform. And again, this isn't really about Milei so much as it is about free market orientation in Argentina. If you don't wish Argentina to go bankrupt again and then fall into the hands of the Kirchner-right left, back into Peronism, if you wish for that to happen, then essentially providing some sort of baseline guarantees that Argentina can get through the next elections and get right-footed is a good idea. So there are some people who are upset about all of this because I guess the idea is that if we lend money to the Argentinians, even if we get it back, that this is somehow a misuse of America's foreign policy funding. But again, foreign policy is about the second worst choice. It's about making no one wants to give loans to Argentina. Nobody wants to give guarantees to Argentina. Nobody wants to do that. But if that is the thing that prevents Argentina from turning back into a sort of Chinese lake, that is a good thing. So far, Scott Bessent's posts on X represent the only details that have been made public about the planned U.S. actions. A key unknown is what Argentina will offer as collateral in return for any U.S. loan. Bessent says Argentina is systemically important, suggesting its problems could damage the global financial system. Now, again, the goal is, can you fix the capsizing Argentinian economy and provide enough stability for investors that actually there's a long-term plan in Argentina? Bessent is trying to make that happen, so is Trump. It's a smart foreign policy move. Okay, meanwhile, speaking of the American economy, President Trump held talks with Democrats yesterday at the White House, trying to avert a government shutdown. The reality is that the Democrats own the shutdown. Everybody basically knows this at this point. Apparently, according to House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, it was a frank and direct discussion, but significant and meaningful differences remain. There are less than 36 hours before federal funding lapses and agencies partially close. Republicans are like, okay, well, don't threaten us with a good time. And Democrats keep trying to shut down the government for presumably no reason. Vice President J.D. Vance says you don't shut the government down. You don't use your policy disagreements as leverage to not pay our troops, to not have essential services of government actually function. Now, is it likely that this gets averted? The answer is it's unlikely. My guess is that you will get a few days of government shutdown, and then there will be some deal that is struck that makes minor concessions to Democrats so they can claim victory, and then Democrats cave. So is this going to be sort of a major issue moving forward in American politics? Highly unlikely. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is already sounding out his members about a spending bill to reopen the government for 7 to 10 days, almost immediately upon the set-in of the government shutdown. A 7 to 10 day spending bill would require unanimous consent in the Senate. Apparently, these are talks in their initial phases. Is this like a big deal? Unlikely. Meanwhile, Democrats, again, for so many Democrats, it's all about signaling. It's all about signaling to their left-wing base. And that is why they can't get out of their own way. It's truly amazing. It really is. If Democrats simply abandon their most far-left positions, they would be significantly better off. But they cannot. It is not possible for them. Instead of simply operating on the basis of a sort of economic populism, instead, they have decided that they're going to double down on stupid. They're going to get more and more extreme. So, Ta-Nehisi Coates, truly one of the most egregiously awful people in American politics, a purple writer, wildly overpraised, a James Baldwin knockoff without the talent or the life difficulties. Ta-Nehisi Coates, he took the time to sit with Ezra Klein where he declared that Charlie Kirk's legacy was, hey, good luck with this argument, seriously.
I don't take any joy in saying this, but we sometimes soothe ourselves by pointing out that love, acceptance, warmth, that these are powerful forces. I believe they are. I also believe hate is a powerful force. I believe it's a powerful, powerful unifying force. And I think Charlie Kirk was a hate monger. I really need to say this over and over again. I have a politic that rejects violence, that rejects political violence. I take no joy in the killing of anyone, no matter what they said. But if you ask me what the truth of his life was, and the truth of his public life, I would have to tell you it's hate. I'd have to tell you it is the usage of hate and the harnessing of hate towards political ends.
What a bag of trash he is, seriously. This is a person who wrote an entire book that was effectively a defense of Hamas. This is a person who literally talked in Between the World and Me about feeling nothing while people burned to death in the World Trade Centers. But don't worry, he rejects political violence. I mean, but this is what the Democratic Party cannot divide from. They refuse to divide from it because it's not enough for them to push economic populism, a thing they've been pushing my entire life. Instead, they have to tie it to a sort of bizarre DEI racism or radical trans politics they just can't let go, which is why they're not pushing sort of traditional blue-collar, purple state Democrats who engage in economic populism. Instead, they're pushing people like Zoran Mamdani. They have to. Their coalition requires the radicalism. I mean, literally yesterday, Zoran Mamdani refused to denounce Hamas. Yesterday. And this guy's going to be the mayor of New York. And they're treating him as though he is some sort of thought leader for the Democratic Party. It's amazing.
I am not going to echo the words of Benjamin Netanyahu. I can, however, share my own words and say them right here, which is that my politics is built on a universality, and I can think of no better illustration of that than from the words of the hostage families themselves. Everyone for everyone. It is something that they have said for months. It is something that they have called for in not only understanding that those hostages must be released, but that this is intertwined with the end of this genocide.
God, he is awful. He's just awful. And this is the person who they keep promoting. By the way, his economic populism amounts to never having to defend his actual plans. Yesterday, he did a press conference about his plan to buy up a bunch of housing. And by buy, I mean spend your taxpayer dollars buying housing and then turning it into rundown trash heaps. Well, he smirked as he received 0 questions on his housing plan.
We'll start with on-topic questions first, please. No questions at all. Well, go ahead, Bernie.
Now, there's a big smile from this socialistic, Marxist, Islamist-friendly moron. Glad that you know what, New York? You get what you deserve. You guys decided to vote for this? You break it, you bought it. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party continues to embrace him. Representative Dan Goldman says, don't worry, we share a lot of goals. She says, yeah, it's kind of wrong that Mamdani is saying that he will arrest the Prime Minister of Israel if he has the ability to do so. But we do share many, many goals. God, the cowardice here is pretty astonishing.
Well, I've had some good conversation with Zoran Mamdani shortly after the primary. He and I have a lot of shared views on affordability and the desire to address our housing crisis, to address the expensive child care. We work together on a free bus pilot in the state legislature. And so I think we share a lot of the goals.
Okay, so good luck to the Democratic Party continuing to embrace all this. President Trump, by the way, is enjoying the Mamdani candidacy probably a little too much. He put out a statement saying that he is going to cut off money to New York City if Mamdani wins. He's going to have problems with Washington like no mayor in the history of our once great city. President Trump posted on Truth Social. Remember, he needs the money from me as president in order to fulfill all of his fake communist promises. He won't be getting any of it. So what's the point of voting for him? This ideology has failed always for thousands of years. It will fail again, and that's guaranteed. A fair point there from the president of the United States. But the Democratic Party is totally unable to divide off from this. It's why moderates in the Democratic Party, people like Rahm Emanuel, they are running uphill races here. This is the point of a Wall Street Journal article about Rahm Emanuel, the former chief of staff to Barack Obama, who's now, because the Democratic Party has moved so far to the left, an actual centrist. Quote, his centrist message clashes with an insurgent progressive base mesmerized by figures such as Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Zoran Mamdani, the self-described Democratic socialist favored in New York City's November mayoral election. Quote, it felt at times a little bit like watching a professional athlete return to the arena after an extended absence. The game has changed significantly since the 65-year-old was last a candidate in 2018 with the explosion of social media and viral videos in politics. Emanuel made frequent mentions of political and policy wins he helped Bill Clinton and Barack Obama achieve, as well as his own in Chicago. But gone were his recent criticisms of his party's brand as toxic and weak and woke. Well, he was right about that. It was toxic, weak, and woke. But you know, it ain't going to pay off for him inside the Democratic Party in all likelihood. Okay, meanwhile, it is worth noting there was major controversy that had broken out after the death of Charlie Kirk about a letter that Charlie wrote to the Prime Minister of Israel. There were those online who were suggesting that the letter that Charlie wrote to the Prime Minister of Israel was somehow a sort of Dear John letter. It was sort of a breakup letter that Charlie was oriented against Israel in this letter. The full text of that letter has now been revealed. by the New York Post, among other publications. And suffice it to say, the letter is precisely the opposite. The letter from Charlie was very pro-Israel, obviously. Charlie's letter is 7 pages long, and it is offering just a bunch of pretty good, solid social media advice to the government of Israel. He points out that a lot of young people are being misinformed by TikTok, being misinformed by the videos they watch on YouTube. And because Charlie was such a social media guru, he basically laid out a series of suggestions in order to help Israel combat all of the anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic crap that was put out on social media. People who lied and said that the letter was anything but that were in fact lying. It wasn't true. It is worth pointing that out. You can go check out the letter in full over at the New York Post. Okay, meanwhile, I have to say that it is amusing to watch as the United Kingdom continues to sink into irrelevance and stupidity. So they had to walk back a study that they recently put out via the National Health Service trying to talk up cousin marriage. Now, the only reason that there are people in the UK trying to talk up cousin marriage is because a vast number of importees from the third world, particularly from Muslim countries, are marrying their cousins in Great Britain. And it turns out that cousin marriage, not actually a wonderful thing. It comes along with some risk of genetic anomaly, obviously. But it turns out that also, solid case that the West was built on the banning of cousin marriage. This is a case that was made pretty openly by an author named Joseph Henrich in a great book called The Weirdest People in the World, which is about people who are from wealthy, well-educated, industrialized, rich countries. And basically, Henrich makes the case that the Catholic Church banning cousin marriage on the continent is what led to the rise of Europe as a great world power. Because cousin marriages create kinship networks, they create tribe. When you get rid of cousin marriage, then actually the nuclear family becomes the locus of all living, and then you have to form other social bonds in the form of religious community or national identity or all the rest. According to Henrich, quote, each century of Western church exposure cuts the rate of cousin marriage by nearly 60%. And the idea is that when you cut off cousin marriage, you get greater individualism, more trust in strangers, because not everybody is your cousin, more analytic thinking to apply broad rules to people who are non-kin, and all the rest. It is just hilarious that the UK has been so overrun by people marrying their cousins, they felt the necessity to actually post an article saying that cousin marriage is a good thing in the end. Is there any other way, honestly, that the UK government could become any more cucked? Is that possible at this point? Is truly an amazing, amazing thing. I mean, and if you're asking, the answer, of course, is yes. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer just yesterday suggested that illegal immigration in the UK was being driven by climate change, not by bad immigration policy, by the world getting warmer.
I think we need to look at every aspect of illegal migration, upstream, looking at the causes, which, of course, are often poverty, climate change, persecution. Look at the cause.
Well, I mean, the other thing you could look at is why your borders are open in the first place. But they're not going to do that. That might implicate their really terrible policy. Keir Starmer, by the way, is, at the moment, the most unpopular prime minister in UK history. So, well done. Truly, well done to the prime minister of the UK, who entered office on the wings of eagles based on the failure of the Conservative Party. Today, according to YouGov, 72% of people in the UK believe that he is doing a bad job as the prime minister. Only 18% think that he is doing a good job. So his approval ratings in the UK are slightly below that of colon cancer. Alrighty, coming up, we will get to Jimmy Kimmel, who's now returning to the airwaves, even for Nexstar, even for Sinclair. Plus, Emma Watson going to war with J.K. Rowling. That's not going to go well for her. Remember, in order to watch, you have to be a member. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro. Check out for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.